Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call today's Judicial and Public Safety Committee meeting to order. It is Thursday, August 14th, 2025. May I please have roll call?
Grape,
Here.
Gums, Linder,
Under here.
Tepe,
Steppy here.
Williams,
Here.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Molina,
Molina present.
and Roth.
Roth is here.
Quorum?
Okay, we have a quorum and we have no remote attendance requests. Okay. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for for approval of minutes. If anybody would like to do a request.
Linda would make a request for unanimous consent of the minutes from July 10th.
Okay, do I have anyone in opposition? Okay, minutes are approved. Public comment, I don't have anyone signed up for public comment in person or online. Before we begin the presentations, I just wanted to make sure everybody is aware that we are trying to limit presentations to 10 minutes. We're going to go straight through the agenda, so there are some business matters to take care of as well. I'll also request if anybody has any questions regarding the presentation to hold all questions until the presenter has done. Some questions might be answered during the presentation. And then we'll just go in order around the room. And if anybody online has questions, please raise your hand. I will be paying attention to those online as well. And your questions will be answered after those here in the room. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the monthly financial reports. The financial reports are on file. Anybody had any questions regarding those at this point? Okay, so we will move on to Merit Commission. And we have someone here from the Merit Commission. Good morning.
Somebody's going to have about 9 extra minutes.
That's not how that's going to work, people. Okay, everybody, 10 minutes or less. So we need all the minutes we need to take. Go ahead.
We didn't quite get to the 24 budget limit. What if we did, I wouldn't get paid and we wouldn't get mileage, or we wouldn't be able to test again. I was just informed by the chief that we already have to test well in advance of what we normally do for patrol. Our list is exhausted. But anyway, in 24, our actual budget was $85,734. We were able to trim $9,000 from that. We took $7,000 off of our own per diem and $2,000 off of our mileage expense. So we cut just under 10% from our budget, which actually puts us at about $2,700 more than 24, but less than last year.
What is your amount of budget for fiscal year 2026 right now? What would that amount be?
Total amount is, let me get there, roughly 88,000.
Okay, any questions regarding the Merit Commission's presentation? Okay, thank you for being here.
Have a good day.
And again, a reminder, we are just reviewing presentations. This committee is not tasked with approving any kind of budget allocations. At this point, we're just reviewing everybody's presentation. Okay, KCOM is next. Good morning.
Good morning. Our monthly reports are on file and we can go ahead and jump into KCOM's budget presentation. Well, while we're doing that, I'll update you on the hiring process. We are in the hiring process. We have completed the skills testing, the interviews, background screening. We're in that process now. So applicants will move along to the psychological exam and then the physical exam. And we hope to have, 2 to 3 telecommunicators hired in a couple weeks.
And Michelle, before we get to that, I failed to respond to your message on Tuesday when we did the proclamation for Mr. Ace, we failed to mention that KingCom had a part of that as well. So do you want to kind of give a little bit of information on that?
Sure. The call happened during our afternoon shift, and a couple of our telecommunicators, I believe our call taker was TC Katie Kurzrock. She is not here today. She works afternoon shift. Also telecommunicator Emily Reese was involved in that incident, as well as shift manager Michelle Sandoval. So we recognize them, and Sheriff Hayen has provided me with the contact number for our important caller, and the great job that he did. So we will be coordinating a time for him to come and visit KingCom.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. There we go. All right, our KingCom budget this morning. I don't know if I don't think so. I think it's still in the. Oh, there we go. All right, all good. Thanks. Okay, excuse me. Agencies that KingCom serves. So our agencies have not changed in the past couple of years here. We dispatch for 9 police agencies and 7 fire agencies. We also handle dispatch services for King County OAM, the King County Sheriff's Office Civil Process Servers, and of course our court services, which I count in one of the 9 police agencies that we serve. Our activities and statistics, I like to do a snapshot of where we're at within the year to date, current, and going 5 years back. At this point, 5 years back is 2020. So we know that's the year of COVID, where we saw a dramatic decrease both in 2020 and 2021. During that time, while phone calls remain consistent, officer-initiated activity such as traffic stops, community-oriented policing, out with vehicles, subjects, anything kind of proactive policing dropped in activity. So as we see this kind of dramatic increase, particularly this year, our volume of activity is much larger this year due to some of the police activity. Our phone calls remain consistent, but our calls for service have increased quite a bit. I also, excuse me, will reference our July report because there is a large increase over last year, and that is specific to traffic stops, community-oriented policing from all of our agencies, not specific to the sheriff's office, and just other activities. Our hierarchy, one change, there is no change, excuse me, for 2026, but there is one change that we had in 2025. So if we look back at our last year's presentation, you will not see that part-time leads and QA/QI coordinator position that's now in the hierarchy, but that's not new for 26. That is new in 25. Otherwise, our hierarchy remains the same. KingCom runs 3 shifts. Our day shift is from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., afternoons 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., and midnight shift from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Our minimum staffing requirements are 3 telecommunicators per every shift, so we cannot drop below those minimums. If there is short staffing of any kind, then that results in overtime, which is obviously within the budget, and you can see where we're trending at this point. We are a special revenue fund. Our revenue comes from our subscriber fees. That is the majority of our revenue, as well as 911 surcharge revenue. I talked a couple months ago about the push for the increase in 911 surcharge revenue. There is a House bill and a Senate bill and legislation to move the increase in 911 surcharge forward. The increase would be $1 more for every phone bill. That's incredibly important to us because as we talk about budget increases, our technology requirements as mandated by the state of Illinois, and other benchmarks that we need to achieve, if we do not see that increase within the surcharge, we will end up going back to our subscribing agencies for that money. So that would result in an increase in subscriber fees. Otherwise, there is a slight increase in our budget for 2026, and part of that is our ETSB revenue. Last year, I planned about $20,000 in ETSB reimbursement, our Emergency Telephone Systems Board reimbursement. It's expenses that we have within our budget that we're able to go back to the ETSB and ask for reimbursement. That process has been kind of absorbed within our 911 surcharge in the past, so it hasn't had its own line item. Last year, to make it more transparent, because it's not 911 surcharge revenue, we added a line item for that revenue to show what we're going back to the board for and what our actual revenue from the state is. So I have increased that this year based on trends on what we're going back to the ETSB and asking for reimbursement in. And some examples of those are like our telephone bills for our administrative lines, operational costs like headsets, connection to our radio networks. So that's stuff we go back and seek reimbursement for. I do want to highlight that we are at the end of our subscriber agreement as well. So I am evaluating what the increases will look like for coming years. Currently in this budget, we have planned up just 5% over last year's costs. Personnel is about 81% of our expenditures. So that's the majority of our budget. In addition to that, like I just mentioned with the 911, ETSB reimbursement comes from the contractual and then those commodities. So you see an increase in both of those because we are going back to the ETSB as well and asking for more money. Our transfer to funds comes from the cost that we pay to IT to support our operations. Our personnel budget is actually slightly below our current year. So it's just slightly below. So we are on trend. So being 81% of our budget, we continue on trend with our personnel expenses. Our collective bargaining agreement was ratified in 2023 and step increases for our union employees this year are 3%. And as I mentioned, this budget does not include any additional positions and does include for the allowed vacancies. So as you see in our current budget, our overtime is trending fairly high, and that is due to those telecommunicator vacancies. And we hope to hire 2 telecommunicators, if not 3 this year, and 2 going into 2026, which will fill those vacancies and eliminate unnecessary overtime. So our budget 2026 over 2025, we have a 3.89% change. We have an increase. I did add revenue to show the additional line item for our ETSB reimbursement, as well as factored in those expenses. So that's not kind of an invisible process anymore. So those are planned in line item 52150 if you're looking at the detail of our budget. I do this sheet every year to kind of keep us organized and answer any questions that the board might have. This is a form finance had provided to us a couple years ago. It just details each line item with an explanation on why we would see an increase or a decrease in those line items. And then looking at our budget comparison from the past years, this is the last 5 years of our KingCom budget. You'll see we steadily continue to move forward. One of the largest increases was in 2022 to 2023 as we address our technical requirements, implementation of next generation 911, different radio projects we've done. In 23 to 24 is when we ratified our new agreement and our staff saw salary increases that are more on par with our neighboring centers. So thank you again to the board for that. And then we've steadily increased the past couple years. And then happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Questions regarding the KingCom presentation? Michelle, do you expect to see any more savings in your overtime because of the temporary telecommunicators we hired? Is that reflected in your budget?
That is reflected not necessarily in our current budget. So if you look at our current budget, we continue trending high, but our temporary telecommunicators started as fully trained telecommunicators and not in training in the middle of, the end of June, beginning of July. So you will start to see the result of those 2 vacancies being filled in our current budget moving forward. So if you look at the past budget and you see how that has trended very high, that's because of the amount of overtime, the vacancies, benefit time from our team. Now with 2 more people added to the team to eliminate excessive overtime, we'll start to see those results towards the end of this year from now moving forward. And then when we talk about the vacancies for 2026, I have not counted in additional. I just count the vacancies as personnel, right? So we would hire 2 to 3 this year. We will have those telecommunicators, temporary telecommunicators moving into the beginning, very beginning couple months of next year. And hopefully as they are exiting, we are filling those with full-time union telecommunicator positions. And then we will hire additional and train into next year. So it's all planned in there. It's just moving parts.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions at this point? Okay, we will move on to emergency management. Scott.
Good morning. Just a couple quick bullet points. We are going this month to take delivery of our new command vehicle. So we'll have a display for the board after we have it. And as this month is Emergency Management Awareness Month, which is about what do we do, next month is Preparedness Month, which is about what can the public do. So we have a proclamation for that, and then I'll be ready to do my budget presentation. Would you like me to introduce or do one before the other?
Yeah, let's do your proclamation first, just in order of the agenda.
So this is just a proclamation recognizing Preparedness Month, which is about what we urge the public to do to be prepared for disasters. And this is an annual thing.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve the proclamation?
Williams moves. Deppie seconds.
Okay, Mr. Williams and Mr. Tepe. Any comments or questions? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Grape,
Gripe, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linda, yes.
Pepe,
Deppie, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Melina.
Lena, yes. Okay, proclamation is approved. Okay, and go ahead into your budget presentation.
Okay. All right, so this is just the profile. We have 6 full-time staff, 11 vehicles and 10 trailers. That's the same as 25, no change there. Volunteers, we are up to 70 volunteers this year, which is a high, at least in the past few years. When I started, we were at about 38, 39 volunteers. The volunteer hours have been moving up steadily. This year, we're on pace for about 11,500-ish. We still have, busy August and September to go. So we might be right around there, maybe around 12,000. The calls are up a bit for us, averaging a little bit more every month. And this is just a summary of our mandates. Basically, we are responsible for, by law, Kane County has to have an emergency management program, and we are responsible for the unincorporated areas of the county, as well as the municipalities who have no established emergency management program, there's 11 of them. And then also to support the established emergency management programs where there's 14. Other than Aurora and St. Charles that have very well developed programs, everyone else has something less than that. So we're providing quite a bit of support to all of them. So that's something unique about the structure of what emergency management does. So we are responsible by law to provide mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery from emergencies and disasters. And just more state and federal mandates. We are working through our emergency operations plan now. It's due in March of 26. We're maybe 50% through. And a bunch of the mandated plans have already been done. So we're in good shape, but it's always a constant. Once this plan's done, we'll move on to the next one to keep updating those. And this is just the county code that basically says we are to follow the state mandate, which we do. And then this is the more specific, the things in bold are the things that we do the most: traffic and crowd control, search and rescue, weather spotting, monitoring, and public events. This is our structure. So the blue boxes are the full-time staff. We have the full-time staff and no part-time. And then the black boxes are volunteers in some kind of leadership role or coordination role. And then the other boxes are just various functions. So the first, we have 2 special funds. The first one is the EMA Volunteer Fund, Special Fund 247. And the purpose of that is to use donations to the fund to support the volunteer program. So the current fund balance is about $55,000. The goals for that fund are to increase volunteer engagement by adding another volunteer dinner and a picnic. And this is all driven by the volunteers. We have a new committee that to represent the volunteers, since it's their money, and they're now, this is just in the past 3 months or so this has started, and they're directing how they want to use the money. So this is something they've wanted for a while, so we've given that to them. And then this is the budget for that. So spending a little bit out of the fund to spend it down. For several years, they haven't been using the money for anything, and we're finally getting back to that. So we'll be spending some of that balance down. It'll be about $12,000 this year. The other special fund is the Local Emergency Planning Committee. This is a state mandated hazardous materials organization, and the purpose is to support planning and record keeping for facilities that house certain chemicals over a certain quantity that's again mandated by the administrative code. We take in a small amount of donations every year, and about half of what we take in is given back out to the 3 hazmat material response teams, which is 2 MABUS divisions, and then the Kane County Bomb Squad. So whatever that money is, it might be $1,500 for the year. They divide it up and it goes to them in terms of equipment or something that will help them. Latest fund balance is about 42,000, and we've been building it up for the past couple of years to be able to do a commodity flow study. So that's one of the goals for this year, is to apply for a grant to get the rest of the money for that. A hazardous materials flow study is looking at what materials are traveling through the county on various roads and railways to better plan for spills and things like that. Everything else is pretty much standard from year to year. And that's the budget. It's about 3,700 this year. And so our general fund goals, the main ones are, like they are every year, is to maintain compliance with the admin code. And we'll be doing that. Also holding quarterly meetings with our partners, providing assistance to municipalities, which we're doing on an ongoing basis. Lately, Batavia has been one of the big ones that's been getting help with plans and exercises. One of the newer things here is we're developing an EOC support team. This is volunteer based, but a group working on social media, monitoring situation unit, and then logistics and resources. Plan to hold training with the crisis management team this year. And then we're still working with our municipal and township partners to adopt mutual aid agreements. And we're encouraging them to keep doing that. All this is pretty standard year to year. One newer one is Disaster Ready Kane, which is a group that we're starting to form that's for recovery. So it's using organizations in the community already to be partners when there's a disaster, to bring people together to help people affected by the disaster. And this December and coming up January is our 5th-year anniversary as an agency. So we'll be celebrating that. So our revenue, there's a slight track down. This is basically federal grant money. In 24, we had an additional grant to do a natural hazard mitigation plan. That's why 24 was higher than the rest. And we've tried to be more conservative with the amounts because we don't know exactly what they are until we know. So we've kind of forecasted that down. Personnel is essentially unchanged from 25. The slight difference is a difference in the number of working days in fiscal year 26. And other than that, in 25, we don't have any change in personnel. From 25 to 26, no change in personnel. As you know, we added 3/4 of a person. We went from a part-time position to a full-time in 25. And then just a summary of our contractuals, commodities. We've reduced all of those quite a bit, down to 36,000 and 35,000 respectively. And this is just the overall summary. So the 25 budget is about 570,000. The 26 is about 495,000, which represents a 13.2% decrease. And capital requests, even though they're not part of the general fund, we were able to reduce the cost of our mass notification system. So we're making that change. This current year, we're paying about 38,000 for Code Red, and the new system is going to be 19,000 in fiscal year 26. And going forward, it'll be about 15,000 a year if we do it again for 27 and beyond. Right now, it's just a 1-year thing. So that's all I have, and I'll take questions.
Okay, right on time. Scott, any questions for OEM? Ms. Gums?
Madam Chair, quick question about this swap of Code Red for regroup. Are we going to see deficiencies at all? I mean, how do they compare?
Regroup is in my about 10 times better.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, Scott, thank you. Okay, next up is Sheriff Adult Corrections. Sheriff Hain, good morning.
Morning, everybody. Good to see you all. As Blair cues us up, I just want to acknowledge our wonderful CFO there in the back, Alicia Dominguez. Give a wave, Alicia. She put all these numbers together for us. And as she says, she every year has to go through our entire budget and touch every single salary line. So that's over 320 personnel. So it's a big job. And she does a fantastic one at it. So out of respect for everybody's time, it's not lost on us that we're the biggest general fund budget in the county. So not to dive all the way down into everything in this presentation, this starts on page 120 of your committee packet. And you can read through our missions and goals, priorities for the year, outcomes for the year in the police division, corrections, our largest division, and court security. And of course, between those three, we have 6 collective bargaining units amongst them all. So obviously those are contractual, and we don't have a whole lot of play there when it comes to budgeting for the next year once they're approved by the county board. And thank you to the county board for unanimous approval on all of those recently. Org charts are up there as well if you'd like to take a look at that. I'm going to get to the numbers that everybody wants to see. So we heard 2 different numbers throughout the last couple of months at finance. And one was we're looking for a 13% decrease, or we're looking for you to match your 2024 expenses. So we feel we did both. So we have, you'll see we went from 7.2 million in 2024, that bottom line there, and we cut and cut and cut our expenses down to 6.2 million. That's a 13% decrease. So we feel like we hit those numbers right on the mark. Now you see our yearly expenses. Of course, that jump, our total number in 2026 for submitted budget, which is mostly due to salaries, is exactly 41.5 million. In 2024, it was 38.2 million. So again, it's those CBAs that are creating that jump in salaries for us, despite the cuts to expenses that I just displayed. Now we are exploring doing some layoffs to some of our exempt non-union personnel to try and make room for the county to be more flexible, and that would happen by the end of the year. See our revenues. Some of you may say, now, Hayne, what's going on with 2023? You guys took in a lot more money. So in 2023, in that year alone, we get a grant every year pertaining to essentially operations in our jail for somewhere in the ballpark of 120,000 to 150,000. They didn't give us anything in FY22, so they paid us for FY22 and 23 in 2023. So we got that lump sum that year. And then also the Live Golf Tournament came to town in 2023, and billing for that brought in a great deal of revenue. We haven't seen that golf tournament come back since 2023. So I just want to give a quick recap. We're still maintaining good grant funding and taking in all that we can. Now, what this does not display is all of our asset forfeiture income. So we generate funds from local asset forfeiture, from drug investigations, to our federal partnerships. We've been using that, and we've been sharing those numbers with the county every single month ever since I became sheriff. And our goal with that is to try and replace all of our operational expenses without using general fund money. And we felt we've done that very successfully over the years. Of course, this is something we can't budget on. It's actually illegal to budget on asset forfeiture funds. So we can only apply what we see on paper at the time. I will take any questions that you all have. I know that was a fly through. I just didn't want to go way down in the weeds and take 11 minutes or 12.
You're good. You're very good on time. Any questions at this point for our sheriff? Okay, Mr. Linder.
Sheriff, You've done some miraculous things in the jail in terms of turning some people's lives around and so forth. Your jail population has changed. 2 years ago, when all of that was really ginned up, we had a lot of people in there waiting for trial because they hadn't made bail. Now with the Safety Act, most of your population of people who were no-shows for their court dates, I shouldn't say most, but a large portion of it.
Large portion.
How has your programming changed in both in terms of what you're doing and what it costs?
We're missing a lot of people that normally would have been held in our recovery pod.
Yeah.
That would have gotten the treatment necessary and the exiting necessary. We're doing our best between the sheriff's office and Lighthouse staff, our program provider in the jail, to keep track of those as they flow through in and out the door within 24 hours. Still trying to track them down on the outside, but very low success rate. And remember, thanks to the Pretrial Fairness Act here in Kane County especially, we got our jail population down under the previous laws, under the cash bail laws, down in the 220s. And this is from 550 when I first became sheriff.
Right.
220s. Now we're averaging about 350 to 360 daily population. And this caused a jump in our FY25 budget because we had, and a little bit of FY24, because we had a bunch more people going on electronic monitoring. Then we had to relocate people to try and support our staff because we weren't hiring at the level of the 300s and the 400s population. Right. So we had to relocate people to different jails. We also had construction going on in the jail. So we faced a lot of hardships. And there were some questions from finance about, hey, Sheriff, why are you paying for housing in other counties out of your food line item? And the reason for that is we've always had the autonomy and the internal control at the sheriff's office to use other line items where we're seeing well under budget to apply to emergency needs, essentially. And that's what's so hard about public safety in forecasting, because things can change like that. I still reflect on June of 2020 when I spent $90,000 in overtime in one day for the civil unrest in Aurora. It's things like that that pop up, and having that autonomy allows us to be very flexible and get the job done and pull from other line items to make ends meet across the entire budget.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff Hain. Okay, Mr. Tepe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sheriff, you had a significant increase associated with labor costs due to union negotiations. How are you handling that in this year's budget?
Well, that is what I mentioned. We made that significant slice to our expenses to try and buffer that. We did settle a total of 6 CBAs in the last 2 years. So obviously we're going to see those increases impact. So what are we doing to offset it? We're going to continue to use our asset forfeiture funds for as many expenses as we possibly can to come in well under budget on those. And again, we're exploring the layoffs of a multitude of exempt non-union people.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Combs?
I have a quick question. Sheriff, we discussed a couple of months ago about the attrition situation and the predicted retirements. Where do we stand on that? And is that going to affect your layoff thought process?
What was the question? The first part of the question?
The attrition situation. So, and where are we at with those predicted retirements, and how will that affect your layoff conversations?
The layoffs are above and beyond the anticipated retirements. So again, my commitment is I cannot and will not let go any frontline staff. It's incredibly hard to let people go that are under collective bargaining agreements. So we're coming up with some attractive offers to help people exit out the door.
Thank you.
Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sheriff, thank you very much. I think something that everyone on the board may not realize is over the last 7 years with Sheriff Hain in office, each and every year until last year, he returned over $1 million to the general fund. So I want to thank you for that. One quick question for you. I was taking some notes, so I didn't know if I heard it correctly or not, but the actual reduction for the general fund presentation for 26 was how much?
13%. Slide back here for you. So we went from 24 at 7.2 million to FY26 at 6.2.
I just didn't believe my eyes. I needed to hear it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that seems to be average the 1 million that you would generally in other times budget for and not need. So I think we're safe when it comes to your budget. I'm sorry, let me just ask my question, then I'll let you go again. Now for the housing detainees in other counties, we had to do that this year because of the all the work we were doing in the jail. Are we doing anything next year? Is there any expected renovations that are going to require that to happen? I know unexpectedly we can't forecast, but anything's planned at this point? Do you
Chief
know?
Gadich, what do you think?
Can you come to the mic, Chief, just so that people online can hear you?
As long as our numbers stay in the 340, 350 range and we have empty pods and we can transfer an entire pod to a new location within the facility to do maintenance or, upcoming painting, we're talking about painting, every pod with building management since they had, haven't been painted since we entered the facility in 2008. As long as we maintain these numbers, then we should be okay.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Gums, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Thought you were getting ready to sing. Any other questions for the sheriff at this point? Okay, Sheriff Hayne, thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to our coroner.
Good morning. There we go. Okay, so I can tell you that, I'll preface this by saying that I believe it's a 23% increase that we're looking at. I do understand your predicament. I do understand, where we're at, but my job is to let you know what we need in order to, efficiently run our office. And, this is where we're at after a very lengthy and thorough evaluation by myself and my staff. So this is my organizational chart. I will point out that at the moment I have 5 full-time deputies only, and I have 1 deputy who's in light duty. My deputies averaged about 410 cases per deputy in 2024. National Association of Medical Examiners suggests no more than 325 for forensic pathologists, no more than 150 families for funeral directors, and no more than 96 cases for detectives. And we average, I could not find exact numbers for coroner deputies, what the standard or recommendations are, but I gave you something in similar professions, and we averaged, again, 410 cases per deputy in 2024. So as you can see, I don't want to spend time to read. I do want to go over my my monthly report. I do want to say a couple of things for July. I do not want to read to you, but here is our missions and goals, which have been presented to you in the past. We are required by state law to investigate certain types of deaths. And we obviously have to go to the site, and the coroner's office will review medical records, conduct interviews, take photographs and x-rays, and perform toxicology as well as histology in order to receive the answers to our investigation. The coroner also issues permits for cremation. Obviously, we have to operate 24 hours a day. And here is the chart of our mandated responsibilities. So statutorily, we are responsible for going to a scene and taking control of the decedent's body. We have to secure blood, urine, and vitreous samples for toxicology results. Obviously, we conduct autopsies. We have to investigate sudden infant deaths. We authorize cremations, as I told you, issue death certificates, as I've told you, and of course, removal of bodies. So a brief reminder that we are responsible for investigating cause and manner of death. Manner of death is 5 categories: accident, suicide, homicide, natural, and undetermined. So as an example, a cause can be a heart attack. Someone can pass from a heart attack, but that would be a natural manner. Somebody can passed from a gunshot wound, from the cause of a gunshot wound. But of course, that could be a homicide, accident, or suicide. So as I spoke about initially, we are currently at 5 full-time deputies, and one is he has returned with light duty, so there are definitely limitations to what our folks who are on light duty can do. Since we are short-staffed, a deputy has been assisting a para-deputy has been assisting deputies, but our para-deputies cannot have their own caseload. So again, even though we have assistance in the field when we have to secure and pick up a body from a para-deputy, a deputy has to be in charge of a case. Examples of where we are mandated to investigate: sudden or violent death, death due to a sex crime, a death where circumstances are suspicious or obscure, a death where addiction to alcohol or to any drug. So as we see issues in the community and we do see an overwhelming need for alcohol and drug use disorder intervention, we are also seeing people passing from this. And as a reminder, we have 3 types of cases. And the reason I repeat this is so that it becomes second nature when you look through my stats. Return to medical, sign out, unnatural. So a return to medical is when we have found that this is most likely a natural death. There is a physician who has cared for the individual and is willing to sign a death certificate. The family is available. Family, when I say family, I include close friends. Family, close friends are cooperative and they are available to attest to the circumstances. We've found that this is not a suspicious case and that the person passed from a natural process. And of course, the physician is then allowed to sign the death certificate. Where we would not have to do an autopsy in these cases, I don't want to minimize the amount of time or energy that is expended in doing a detailed investigation. So our deputies are very much responsible for their investigations with return to medical, because we can't find all this information out unless we've searched for it, interviewed, and looked at the entire clinical picture. And then we have our sign out. And so our sign out is a case where we have to do a little bit more extensive investigation because there is no physician to sign. So this could have been this was a natural cause of death, and we don't have anyone else to sign the death certificate because a physician is not willing to do that or is not available. Perhaps the individual didn't seek medical care for a long time, and so there's no one there. And we have to do the investigation to ensure that this was a natural death. And in that case, I will be signing the death certificate. And sign out on unnatural are where we are looking at the cases where it could have been a homicide. It could have been a suicide or an overdose. So this is where we very likely are going to have an autopsy. We have to do toxicology, which can be extensive. I'll go into that in a little bit. But this is a case where we have to do more, bring the person in, and like I said, do an autopsy. So I've identified some areas where I need to look at to see where we can save money and continue to function efficiently as per state statutes. So we've spoken in the past about toxicology. I've explained what is involved in toxicology, but perhaps the most important numbers to you in this budget, in these budget constraints, I can tell you that toxicology can be anywhere between $250 to $600 per case. We did the math and it looked like the average cost for toxicology was somewhere right under $500 per case. In 2024, we spent 134,896 for toxicology. Our year-to-date for tox is 111,000. And here is my 5-year comparison. For 2025, we have what has been budgeted, and then we have the budgeted amount is in blue, and then the red amount is what we actually spent. And for 2025, the red amount is where I am at for toxicology. So traditionally, I want to point out that we have requested less for toxicology, but have had to amend to reflect our actual. So going in, we may be asking for less, but at the end of the year, we have to reflect to what we've actually spent. And rather than doing that, I would prefer to let you know where we're at and what I believe the numbers would look like for next year. Again, that's using my crystal ball. But toxicology is one of our major components and somewhere where we spend the most money. Regarding autopsies, you've heard me talk about autopsies before and why they're done and why they are a statutory mandate and how important they are so that we can find out why people are dying. And that is my statutory responsibility to categorize something into a manner of death, which are the 5 categories that I spoke to you about. So perhaps the last few sentences are what's most important for you today, as I realize that you understand that this is something that I have to do. So our autopsies can cost anywhere between $1,500 to $1,750. About 80% of our autopsies cost $1,750, and 20% of those autopsies, when our forensic pathologist is on vacation and has to be covered, are a little less expensive. So 2024 total autopsy expenditure was $460,650. So we are at 326,000 at this time. And I will not get into that right now, but again, autopsies are where we spend the most money, and I am most definitely looking at ways to reduce that. This being my first year, everything takes time, but hopefully you will be happy with my answers and my solutions if everything works out the way I would hope it would. So here are our 5-year comparisons for autopsies. And in 2021, we budgeted 66,000 and some for autopsies. We ended up spending 416,650. We budget, the number in blue is what we budgeted, and the number in red is what we've amended the budget to look like so that it could reflect our actuals. In 2024, it looks like we only went over 150, but I'm not sure. I wasn't here, but I'll move on to 2025. Where we're at in the red is that this is where we're at year to date for autopsies. Again, I realize this is a problem and I am looking for ways to find solutions that hopefully won't cost us more money, too much more anyway. I'll move into salaries and wages. And again, these are negotiations that have been made through collective bargaining agreements. I came in after the bargaining agreement was agreed to for salaries and wages for 2026, but this is what it looks like. And this is where we're at 2025. The increases will reflect, the increases from 2025 to 2026 will reflect a 3% increase for salaries for our deputies. Our overtime salaries are listed, and I will go to 2025. And we are spending a lot of time in overtime because the collective bargaining agreement allows our deputies to receive 10 hours of straight time per pay period and 4 hours of premium overtime per pay period. Also, I am short a deputy, and our current deputies have been having to cover that. Five-year trend analysis for the coroner's office. So my challenges, the increasing cost for autopsies and toxicology, reducing the length of time it takes to close cases. So I keep all of my, we ask our families to review us and tell us how we are, how we're doing. And I honestly just pulled out the top. There is one that I was looking for specifically that I went through, but these are just the top ones that I found in my folder. Staff could not have been more professional, responsive, and helpful. I can't commend them highly enough. We were treated with such empathy and respect that I had to write a personal letter. These are different reviews of how our families were engaged with the coroner's office. My siblings and I appreciate all that the coroner's office did for our family during the worst time of our lives. They were respectful, sincere, and non-judgmental. To me, that's very important, the non-judgmental part. I don't know how these people do this job. And so one of the ones that I was looking for, I've received a handful of these reviews, and the one thing that keeps
Coroner, Silva, I'm sorry I don't want to interrupt you too
Right
much,
on.
but you're
Way over?
You're way over.
Okay.
And I don't want to lose any quorum, so.
Thank you. So my apologies for that. May I just have 60 seconds to wrap up?
Please, yes.
Thank you. I have a handful of questionnaires that respond to the fact that our cases take too long to close. This one particular took 5 months to close to get a permanent death certificate. She or he was not happy, understandably so. This deputy is no longer with us, but it's still a problem and an issue and something I'm trying to correct. So one more thing I have to read. Sorry. So the last 3 challenges are related to the fact that the office is very short-staffed. This office requires at least 8 deputy coroners to meet minimum staffing requirements. And we, as I pointed out, have 5 with 1 on very limited hours. Each year, we lose at least 1 deputy, in some cases more than 1, who leaves due to low salary, heavy workload, and we are currently dealing with an average turnover of 15%, but it could be a little more depending on the year. So those are our challenges, and we are looking for the solutions to find them, to fix them. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the coroner?
Madam Coroner, are your numbers for 25 through June 30th through July 31st or to date?
The numbers for these are, which one are you looking?
Well, just you had 25 year to date, or you had 25 year to date. I just want to know
Yeah,
if they
those
were
are to date.
today. Okay.
But some of them potentially could have been August 8th.
Okay. Are you seeing significantly more deaths in 25 than you were seeing in 24?
I believe we have a 3.8% increase.
Okay.
I can
Okay.
give you that exact number, but yes, we
Okay,
are seeing.
That's close enough. Thank you. What will be the impact to your office if you don't get the increase you're asking for?
Well, I can tell you that we're functioning short-staffed right now, and the problem, I can tell you what happened on Sunday and Monday. We have 1 deputy in the office, and then we have to call in a para-deputy to come in. This was on Sunday. I had 3 cases on Sunday, all over the county. The same thing happened on Monday. So one of my families, I was on the phone with personally, giving updates to the police officer and to the family because it took us a few hours to get to their home. And you can imagine the repercussion of having your lifeless
relative in your home and waiting for the coroner's office. Thankfully, everybody understood, but I do have to explain the fact that we're short and what's going on. So it is a big repercussion, in my opinion, to the families of King County.
Corner. Mr. Grape?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. I don't know that I saw the number, but I think I heard an increase being requested in 30 something.
I believe it was 23%.
23. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Coroner, 23% equates to what amount in your budget?
I believe 300 or so.
And that's an increase that you're requesting?
That's the increase that I feel that we need in order to sustain the operations efficiently. And obviously, we're going to do whatever we have to do to continue to operate at any level.
Okay, any other questions for the coroner?
Lewis online.
Oh, Miss Lewis, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Hey, good morning, Dr. Silva.
Good morning, board member.
Nice to hear you.
Nice
I
to
have
hear you.
just a couple quick questions. We had been talking the last couple years about our toxicology lab in-house.
Yeah.
And where are we at on that, and what are our savings expected for that? And also, we were talking about it potentially being a revenue stream.
Absolutely. So that is a collaborative effort with the state's attorney, the sheriff, and myself. And I can tell you on where I'm at personally, I've worked extensively with the state's attorney's office to figure out under what parameters we can run tests through the in-house lab. It is a lot more complicated than you would think, because we have to look at statutory authority. And I cannot concurrently run tests with one lab and then in-house lab, because then it exceeds my statutory authority. So we've had to look at a lot of these different things. And in order to establish our Kane lab, we have to run test samples and also seek accreditation. So it's been something that I've been very interested in. I've been working very hard on, as far as the coroner's office is concerned, for the past, 8 months. But I can tell you that we are moving forward. That is one of the ways that we are going to be able to save a significant amount of money. I assumed it would be a 5 to 7 year project, and speaking with the sheriff, he hopes it will happen a lot sooner. And I agree. Let's try to make it happen faster. So yes, I am moving along. But I also have to make sure that we're doing everything legally as to not affect what the state's attorney has with her cases. And we have to give her the data that she needs in order to prosecute these cases. And we have to make sure that it is good data. So I'm still working on putting the policies in place in order to move in that direction. And I think we all are. I think the sheriff's office can speak a little bit more as to where we're at with the building. I believe some contracts are being signed, but we are most definitely moving forward. And yes, this is a way to save money, and I am fully behind it.
All right, so we'll see that in the future, several years.
Board member, would you mind if the sheriff's office?
Yeah, I have Officer Kedich who wanted to add to that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just want to give the progress of the lab. Currently, the contract has been signed. Construction has already begun. The relocation of the gym from the sheriff's office facility to the multi-use facility, that portion of the project has begun with the electrical work needed at the multi-use facility. The new gym floor has been ordered. The material for the electrical improvements for the lab have started to arrive, and the electrician hopes to start next week on getting some of the piping from the main switchgear to the new lab mechanical areas. So we're moving right along. We hope to be into the lab by the first quarter of 2026. And accreditation could start after the lab is completed. So because then we'll meet the environmental conditions. Right now, we can't meet those environmental conditions required for accreditation.
Okay. Great.
Ms. Gumbs, do you have a follow-up question?
I'll let Ms. Lewis finish.
Yeah, I just had one other question, not related to that, but thank you both for that information. I love that whole project, and I do see how it's going to help us in the future. Is there any possibility, and you might not know this answer, that any of the opioid settlement funds could be used, like for the autopsies for overdoses?
I don't believe so. I'll have to get
Okay.
you an exact answer from the state's attorney, but I don't believe so.
Yeah. Okay, I was just thinking out of the box.
But
Okay,
that's
thank
great.
you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Ms.
am now
Gums.
done.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gums?
Thank you. I just want to point out the collaboration with the sheriff's office, the state's attorney, and the coroner's office with this forensic Labrador retriever's my dog. Anyways, I just want you all to know at this level, those those electeds and those partners are reaching out for, I mean, they do their applications for grants through the federal government where we have, through our lobbyist team, highlighted that as a super important project. And I hope we get it done quicker. But to the point of revenue, once we get there, I think that is an absolute, definite, you know, other agencies will be coming to us. So to that point, but we have to get there. And I would like to thank, you know, I think our undersheriff worked on the projects, the applications, our state's attorney's office, our coroner. We submit those every year. Now that's all political, right? They're earmarks and all kinds of grants, but to that point, I think once we get there, it will actually bring in quite a bit of revenue.
Thank you, Ms. Gums. Any other questions or comments regarding the coroner's budget? Okay, we will move on to judiciary and courts.
Okay. Since budgets are boring, I thought I would start out with something that you might be interested in. And that's the involvement of federal law enforcement at our courthouses over the last month or so. If you've not seen it, in response to a particular attorney who decided to write a letter to a newspaper, I sent a letter out to the community, both through our regular press communications and then generally. Thank you. If you don't know, ICE in particular has been operating in our courthouses for 20 some years. There's nothing new about federal law enforcement coming to our buildings to arrest people who have federal warrants. It's just the way it's conducted now is different. Previously, before the Trust Act was enacted in Illinois, law enforcement would simply come when a person was in custody, or if somebody showed up for court, they would calmly and quietly identify themselves, probably to the sheriff's office, who would then let us know, hey, Judge, there's an ICE warrant or there's an FBI warrant or anything. I've had experiences with all those federal agencies, and that person would be taken out through our jail system out back to the van and transported. The Trust Act prevents law enforcement from interacting with them and assisting in any way. So those agents who are performing the duty that they have been done for the last 20 years now come to our public spaces to find these individuals. I'd like to commend our sheriff's office and the individuals who work there and in our court services who have to deal with them and in some of our courts, how seamlessly it's worked. We have fortunately not had any incidents here in Kane County of any of the kind of drama that you see around the country. While a lot of that, in my opinion, is performative for the people who've changed these policies, Kane County doesn't have that and shouldn't have that. I saw ICE agents out in our parking lot taking up the sheriff's department's handicap spaces, unfortunately. And I stopped and talked to them and told them, you know, we have a general order we entered in May, and I ask you only that you follow that order. And they have, to my satisfaction, done so. They're trying to be as least disruptive as possible, following the rules that we have in the interaction between our federal and state laws. And thus far, I can say that it's operated without too much of an incident. If you have any questions about it, more details, I'll be happy to share that with you, but I just thought you'd like to know that in advance.
Thank you.
With respect to our budget, there are two slides that I'd like to know. That's somebody else's. There are two slides that I'd like to go over with you. First of all, is this one. If you can see it. One of the things that we were asked to do is to look at our 2026 submitted budget and compare it and try to reach down to our 2024 actual budget. And I could not reconcile that request because you're talking about two different things in existence. And so I thought I'd maybe explain it to you this way with the help of these slides that Andrea and Jason put together for us. First of all, in 2024, like the Sheriff's Department, we're also foolish and we return money back to the general fund. In this case, it was 14% of our budget, a little over $600,000. Our average is about 9.5% that we return every single year. Why would we do that? And why would that be in our budget? Because unlike household budgets, and I wish more of the public was here to hear this, unlike household budgets where you can control your expenses and decide whether you're going to go out to dinner or whether you're going to take vacations or buy a new car, our budgets are dependent upon projecting what the society is going to bring to us. We don't know how many interpreters we're going to need or how many jurors we're going to have or other expenses we have. And when we have millions of dollars in mandatory state mandated obligations, we budget for what we anticipate. In addition, if you look at the third line under 2024, we had state reimbursements of $645,000 for interpreter services. We're reimbursed 100% for interpreter services. So if you look at our current budget, which has $900,000 for interpreter services, if we actually incur $900,000, that's a zero in our budget line item because we get reimbursed 100% for that. What we don't get reimbursed for, and we have to have room in our budget for, are exotic languages. Russian, Quechua, which we don't even have those individuals who live in the state of Illinois. They either have to appear remotely or we have to transport them for trials. They can cost us $2,000 to $3,000 a day for interpreters with that background. And every language that you can think of now increases in the state of Illinois and increases in Kane County. So there are some built-in budget opportunities for that. But if you were to compare our submitted budget for 2026, the $5,194,000, the difference between that number and the actual in 2024 is $1.5 million. But if you look at the two numbers I brought to your attention, the money we returned, the $600,000 and the $645,000 in 2024, that's approximately $1.25 million. So the number really is, you'd have to add those two numbers back into the budget to see what we really had actual wise, because we returned them out and we were credited amount or reimbursed amount from the state. The biggest difference is that we are estimating $900,000 for interpreter services in 2026. In 2027, that number, I think, is on the last slide. No. That number was currently for this year is $725,000. So every year it goes up every year. But given that we've had those differences in increases, I wanted to show you this slide. If you notice, our 5-year actual expense accounts, and I'm glad we were requested to do this, are roughly the same. There's a few $100,000 difference in each one, but if you notice, we went down from 24 to 23, or between 23 and 24. And that is because of the unpredictability of what services we're going to have to provide when we budget for this amount. So, you can see there's a year average number on the bottom of 9.5% that we return over those years. It's because of that, when you account for how much we return and are anticipated to likely return again based on prior performance and how much we're reimbursed, that it's difficult for us to reconcile a request to cut 30% of our budget. It's not really a thing that we can do, because it's not the comparison of the actual and the budget is not a real comparison. So as we stand, we think our 2026 budget is as lean as it can be. There are some things that are mandated for us to do and some things that we have to provide. One of them is on this slide. It's approximately, oh, that's not that one. It's a little over $2 million in judicial mandates pursuant to all of these obligations we have. When we looked at things that could possibly be cut, if the board was really looking to have us cut things, we're looking at cutting, after you reconcile these numbers, somewhere in the, I don't know, maybe $50,000. And where those cuts come from are, we wouldn't feed jurors anymore. I mean, those are the kinds of limited things that are available to be cut that aren't either mandated or operationally needed in anticipation of what we expect in 2026. I'll leave you with one final note. I don't know if any members of this committee are on the board that are approving developments in our county, but I drive by the anticipated LaFox development that's coming into the village of Campton Hills sooner rather than later. It's 960 acres worth of development. Our county continues to get larger. We provide services. That's all we do. We don't buy anything. We don't make anything. We don't sell anything. So to the extent that we have to cut things in the future or the public expects us to do so, it's really just a request to not provide certain services. And I don't say that lightly. I understand that's what we've been elected to do, is to provide those services. So hopefully when you look at our 2026 budget, you can see, given the numbers that are illustrated on this presentation, there really isn't a fair comparison between 2024 and 26. And there really isn't room for us to do much more than what we've submitted. We anticipate, again, being good stewards and returning what we don't spend and getting as much reimbursement from the state as possible. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if I can't, certainly Andrea or Jason are able to do so.
Okay, any questions for the Chief Judge regarding his budget? Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Judge Villa, with respect to the translators' fees, I see where they're going up. I understand that. that is 100% reimbursable. Are those numbers included in your budget?
They are. That's why
So
that
that's
line item
some-
of 900,000, if it's reimbursable,
Yeah.
in my mind, my limited mind, is a zero.
Yeah. So in other words, whatever the translators expenses are for the year, it's 100% reimbursable to you.
Correct.
So in looking at your budget amounts, do you need that money for cash flow then? Or what is the reason for including that in your budget?
Well, like the state always does to us, we have to spend it first to get reimbursed. And so anticipating that we're already going to be increasing every single year at $100,000 to $150,000 per year. And if you look at the difference between, just take the last 5 years, we had $97,000 of reimbursement in 2020. I know that was a COVID year, but the next year was 463,000. And 2 years later, it's 645,000. So in order to have that in our budget, otherwise we'd be in the position to do this. We would cut months from our budget, and then we'd come in here with resolutions to have you pay things in advance so that we could get reimbursed. And resolutions for money that the board tells us we shouldn't be asking for.
I think it's important for the board as a whole to understand that even though this is reimbursable and hopefully, I don't know what time frame it is that you collect that after you pay it out. But if it's during that same accounting year, that would be reimbursed or reduce your budget.
It's about 2 months. About
2
60
months.
days.
Okay.
It's in the same calendar year, fiscal year, if that's what you're.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, that was my concern. So anyhow, I noticed in 24 to 25, it went up 80,000, which is less than the other years before that.
Correct.
Is that just an anomaly or?
It's the unpredictability of society's decision to commit crimes or need interpreters for any other things, orders of protection and things of that nature. It's the reason why we can go down, we can return more 1 year than we did the year before. And as I say, if the board prefers that we reduce our budget amounts so that it appears that we're going to spend less and then come back for resolutions every 3 months, I think that's bad stewardship on our part. I think that's us coming back and asking for money that you told us we shouldn't be spending, but we now have to.
Well, I think we have to be transparent. So I agree with you on that point. Not thrilled with the increase, but
I know.
we're going to do what we can. And I guess actually a question maybe I have for you, Judge, or anyone here is, we have limited amounts of money right now.
Mhm.
So we don't really know how to handle actual needs or perceived needs. So that is the dilemma the board as a whole is reaching, just as you have a dilemma in coming up with a budget. So we appreciate your candidness, and I think we understand better too with the translators how that works. If it's about a 60, 90-day period between paying it out and getting it back, that is something that we might be able to adjust a little bit then too. Because actually, if we're only 2 to 3 months off on that, we could take a look at maybe a quarter of that amount as needing to be there available for you. So just a thought, but thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a way to budget knowing that we're accounting for reimbursements, because this isn't going to be the only department that gets reimbursements from the state. But if there's, I don't know, Kathleen isn't here. If there's a way to budget knowing that we are going to get reimbursed for this amount, it's not really a line item from our general fund. It's kind of a side item, kind of like a special fund of some sort where it's reimbursed. Because I know Lisa's going to come up next. This isn't the only department that has reimbursements that are we're going to get. It's not like we don't. It's not a grant. It's their known reimbursements. So I don't know if there's a mechanism of creating that sort of a special fund for it. I'm not sure, but Madam Chair wanted to share something with us too.
Just a question regarding the translators. Judge, you mentioned that if it's Spanish, maybe Polish, a standard, I don't want to call them standard, they're all standard languages.
It's true though. That's how they're described. We call them exotic languages when they're things that are not usual
Not,
in high volume.
you don't have the non-high volume languages. And that is something we have to pay for.
We are required to pay for an interpreter, the judiciary is. The state's attorney educated me on this earlier last year when I said, why are we providing interpreters for certain circumstances? And we have to.
And what is that cost again? You said it was $2,000 a day?
It varies depending on the language. So let's take, for example, Tagalog. That Tagalog is a language that we see a lot in Elgin and other areas. There might be local interpreters who do that. But another language, Quechua, which is no one lives in the state of Illinois who speaks Quechua that is a certified court reporter, or excuse me, not court reporter, certified translator or interpreter. So if we need that person to come in for a trial because somebody's been accused of a crime and speaks that language, and they and their witnesses need that interpreter, we might need two of them because an interpreter cannot work for 5 hours a day in a courtroom at the same time. That could cost us $3,000-$4,000 a day plus room and board and everything else.
So what is that line item for that we have got to pay? That's non-reimbursable.
That part is non-reimbursable, and it would be, I don't know if it's in our, I can't remember what line item that is. Oh, it is. Oh, it's under contractuals. It's under the same line item, is what I'm being advised.
And Chief Judge, just on that point, we have AI that's used for a lot of things now. I know in the hospital setting, we have a kind of like a AI computer that does all these translated services. Because it's not court certified or translator, are we not allowed to use that type of service?
So Rob Villa's point of view on this is that the interpreters have gone too far and they charge too much money, and somebody's now going to decide that they're obsolete because artificial intelligence and clients that can do that in translation are going to be used. You're going to see them in your sheriff's cars. You're going to see them in law enforcement cars where they have hundreds of 100 languages available to them. Yeah, I think this is an attrition item that's going to happen in the future. We are, however, beholden to the Supreme Court's mandates and obligations to provide certain types of interpreters. If we were to spend money on an AI client and use it, I don't know if that's going to be an appropriate record accepted by the Supreme Court at any time in the near future. And until it is, we can't do that in the court system. It's separate. It's different from law enforcement being able to use it to perform their duties on the street. The court system has a different record requirement, so we can't explore it at this time.
Right. So wait a minute. I was still, did you come up with the number?
What I was going to say is we don't have a specific number. We don't break out exotic languages versus Spanish interpreters. It's all in the same line item as an interpreter line item. Exotic languages are less than our Spanish interpreters. But I could get the percentage of the number.
Probably an easy way to do it is if we know what your reimbursement is and you know what your costs are, just minus the reimbursements, and then you have an idea of what your actual contractual costs are.
The difference is probably maybe $100,000 difference between what we get reimbursed and what we don't. However, what Judge was saying is there is a movement by the Supreme Court. They are looking at additional funding for exotic languages. So currently the AOIC maintains an interpreter list, and to be certified or registered, you take a test. The pass rate is 10%. So the list grows very infrequently, if at all. So that is the pool of interpreters that we all use in the state, every circuit. They are talking about increase in finding funding for the exotic languages that don't allow for testing. So that is future funding, and that's our expectation because the Supreme Court is looking at that right now, is to provide us with additional funding so even exotic languages will be reimbursable.
It sounds like a wonderful opportunity for our young college students to go into a very lucrative career and necessary career.
And that's why that number is higher, as Andrea explained. We have to anticipate that the state, because we've heard it now at several of the chief judges meetings, that's one of the things they're going to try to do for us.
Okay, I have a few more people asking questions. Ms. Gumbs and then Mr. Gripe.
I don't have any questions, but I think, we often take for granted, or I take for granted sometimes, that what we're explaining is understood by the public. So I would like, it's not an average interpreter. It's very, very different than somebody coming to the scene of a crime or any scene to interpret. It's the requirements under the judiciary are high, and the certifications are extremely different. They're very different. So for the lay people that say, oh, well, why can't, somebody down the hall come and translate? It's not the same thing. And I think that needs to be highlighted. And then also, as far as the reimbursement is concerned, I would like to highlight that the state of Illinois historically did not pay their bills on time, but we are now, I mean, the state in general is doing better. So we can't, in my opinion, we should not rely on that reimbursement to come back in 60 days. I mean, we have to have that included. We have to pay the bill because history says that sometimes they don't pay their bills on time.
But whether the reimbursement took 5 days or 90 days, the bill has to be paid in advance to be reimbursed. That's how it has to happen.
I mean, we were 13 months? I think the state of Illinois was like 13 months behind on bills for a long time. So that's why I don't think that's a fair thing to ask for.
I'll just add really quick too, with the shortage of certified interpreters, I mean, we all fight over the same list. The timely payment to them, whether through us and then waiting again through the state, is critical to keeping them here, which is what we really want to do. So I think consistency with that is very important.
They drive the market right now, quite frankly.
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Gripe?
Thank you. You kind of asked the question I wanted to get to, but I was wondering if we could get ahead of this a little bit on the AI front, because as we sit here, AI is getting smarter and better and faster at everything. So I don't know if it's the state's attorney's office or who could find out at what point we can start using AI, because you're right, Judge, it's going to be in police cars. It's going to be in the coroner's office. Well, for the living people.
Well,
so
how do you have AI testify though?
Well, when it's smarter than me, it'll be able to do it better. I have a large soapbox I could get on this topic, but I won't get on it. I'm gonna just tell you this. The use of artificial intelligence for some of the services that are provided in judiciary, there are some that are practical and money saving, and then there are others that are dangerous. And what I mean by dangerous is this is a human system. I said it earlier. We don't buy anything, make anything, do anything like that. The judiciary, by our Constitution, federally and state, is the authority in the state of Illinois. We don't have any power over people. If you see me walking down the street, you say, that's the chief judge, and I say, come over here, you just keep on walking because I have no ability to do anything. What we do is we decide things that people don't want decided against them. And I believe that people are not going to accept technology deciding things of importance to them, like where their children are going to go to school in divorce courts, or who inherits money from grandpa when he dies in a probate court, or whether or not you're guilty or innocent of a particular crime. That's for us humans in our society to continue to decide. Translation and things like that, I don't know where the Supreme Court's going to go with it. I don't know if they'll make a decision based on financial reasons or not, but I'm going to bet everybody in here uses Siri on their phone at some point in time to dictate a text while they're driving. They can, right? And it's relatively accurate. So what I'm saying is that I think the judiciary will move slowly on adopting AI in the courtroom for the reasons that you also don't want your doctor to be giving you advice through an email of what your results are. You want to hear that in person to protect the human system.
Thank you, Chief. And Mr. Roth?
I want to preface this saying, while I was an accounting minor, I never got a CPA, but part of accounting is you could create an accounts receivable. You know you're going to receive that money, and then it would offset the expenses as it occurs. But you got to get the Kathy to rule on that, and probably some auditors to come in and say, because you know, is it pretty close to 100% you're going to get reimbursed. It's just there's going to be a lag. And that then it will at least have the transparency. Oh, we're going to get reimbursed because it's right there in the books. So I'd follow up with that. And regarding AI, it's moving so fast. Ethics is about a year or two behind. So why, yeah, you may want to implement it until it's proven foolproof, because AI still makes mistakes. And one of the big examples they use, if you ask AI how many R's are in strawberry, it comes back and says 2, and really there's 3 because they programmed it wrong. And it would cost them millions to change it. So you got to be cautious. And like the judge says, it won't happen immediately. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Any other questions regarding the budget presentation? Okay, we will move
Madam
on.
Chair.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Tepe. Go ahead.
Chief Judge, we spent a lot of time associated with one part of the budget, but the key thing is that your budget is extremely in excess of the recommended amount that we've talked about. So if you were have to reduce your budget to the kinds of levels that we have proposed, what would be the outcome?
Well, again, I don't think we're beyond what is expected for us. And I think historically, if you look not only at the chart I just showed you, if you factor in what we're likely to return because of the way we have to budget and the reimbursements that are expected, we're much more narrow than appears. But the answer to your question is, what would we really cut? Again, we just provide services. So the realistic things that we would cut are things like when jurors, the members of the public come and serve as jurors, we would not feed them. We have a cafeteria in the building that judiciary pays for at the Judicial Center, and we would just not have one. I think it's problematic to give jurors a $10 check and thank them for the day and have them go out to McAllister's and spend $18 on food and drive there and come back and be late and maybe get a traffic ticket on the way back. But there are not a lot of line items to cut. It would be contractuals on things that we have, certainly, but it's not going to be staff. We have a very lean operation for orders of protection, for example. We have three people who handle orders of protection for people in the state of Illinois. We currently have 1,000 orders of protection on one court call. We have one individual now who runs our jury selection system process, our jury commission. We used to have two. Unfortunately, one of them has passed away. We're going to hear some more about that at one of the next meetings. So we operate pretty lean on terms of a personnel. And the other thing that we always like to say is a part of realistic, Ms. Tepe, is, Post-it notes and things that we buy don't provide our services. Our services are provided by individuals. So if we were to ever cut individuals, we're just not providing services. Similar to everyone else office in this room.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Tepe. Anything else? Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last statement or question. With respect to your budget then, Judge, what you're proposing is a 15% increase over 25.
It is a 15% increase over 25 submitted. But when you look at what the actuals are, we're probably going to be right there.
Yeah, we can only use the
I know.
budget we have.
I know. I know.
We
And I
don't
know
know
that's
actuals yet.
That's my limited accounting brain. I understand what you have to present. But again, if we did make those cuts to get down to something below zero, I guess, we're going to be back here with resolutions on things that the board is going to be required to pay for because they're going to be mandated costs.
Mhm.
We think we're better stewards of the money, asking for that in advance and returning a significant portion of it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. No other questions. I don't see anybody else online, so we will move on to our state's attorney.
Thank you. Our reports are on file. For some reason in this budget meeting, I decided to put a resolution, so I apologize for that. But I do have a resolution regarding a juvenile justice council grant.
Okay. And do you want to just go ahead and introduce it?
Yes.
It looks like a housekeeping one?
It is just very housekeeping. We have this every single year.
Okay.
So it's just a grant that we have. It's an intergovernmental agreement, so we can continue to maintain our juvenile justice program.
Okay. May I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve the resolution?
Tepe moves.
Mr.
Linder
Tepe
second.
moves, Mr. Linder seconds. Any questions or comments regarding the resolution? Okay. May I please have roll call?
Grape,
Gripe, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Pepe,
Tepe, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes. Okay. This passes on.
Thank you. So my budget presentation is going to be in two different parts. I will be discussing some of the procedural. This has been requested by my JPS partners, as well as a focus on what JPS actually does, because we are service providers. We do not have things that we can traditionally cut in the way that other people can, as our chief judge said. You've just got our end of the year report. The end of the year report details what happened in 2024 for the state's attorney's office. There are some numbers in there I'd really like you to focus on, including the amount of domestic violence cases that have significantly increased. Again, much like the chief judge, I have to budget for what I think is going to happen. I cannot control it. I cannot control the amount of people that are arrested. I cannot control the violence that occurs. I have to be reactive to it. So one of the things my JPS partners asked me to do was to talk about what are the budget requirements. So this is the part where I am the lawyer for all of you and for the county. The county board has to prepare an annual budget every year, and they have to account for all sources of revenue as well as all anticipated expenditures. Within that, the county board at the September session also has to determine the amount of county taxes to be levied for all purposes. And so for right now, for this budgeting season, we all as county officers or as department heads have to look at the budget to see whether or not the county board has taken in all consideration of revenue sources. Have we looked at all interest income? Have we accounted for all state income such as sales tax and income tax? Have all of the elected offices and departments been reviewed to see what is mandated versus what is not? Has it been reviewed to see what is a priority versus what is not? And have any other revenue sources been explored? So in addition to the county board doing that, this is something that the county officers have to take into effect as well. And right now, we don't know really what the deficit is going to be because we do not know if there's going to be an increase to property taxes and whether that increase is just for growth or for CPI when we're truly looking at the budget deficit. What has to happen is this, what we're doing right now, this process. We have to present at our standing committees. Obviously, you know that's what we're doing right now. Then the standing committee has to make recommendations to finance and budget, and then ultimately to the executive committee. All of these recommendations have to be done 60 days before the county board meeting at which the budget is going to be approved. And so the problem that we've seen in this process is the county board through the finance committee has now been suggesting cuts before any proposed budget has been done. And for anybody who was on the marathon long county board meeting on Tuesday that thankfully I got to remotely watch, there were cuts that were already recommended, but that all of that was deferred based on legal advice because we're not doing it the right way. The county board has the power to be fiscally, financially responsible, and obviously for budget mandates. But what the county board also has to do is they have to fund the county officers. We have to have proper rooms and offices, and we have to have reasonable and necessary expenses for our various departments. Under law, we have internal control. And I know this is something that not a lot of people like, but when you give me a budget, it is up to me to spend it. It's not dictated what I have to spend it on. That means you have to give us an aggregate lump sum of money. And we obviously are proving to you through these meetings why we're justifying what it is that we need. It is our job, and I have openly admit this, that we have to stay within our appropriations that we have been given. If we think we're going to go over, that's when we have to come and ask for budget resolutions. So I just want to detail a little bit. I took office December 1st of 2020. That year, I gave end of year stipends to the employees that were already anticipated by the prior state's attorney. This has been historically an issue within Kane County that any excess money that's used that wasn't set aside for salaries, or maybe we had extra salaries, were given out. What the county board asked me to do after that first year was not to provide any end of year stipends any longer. And I did so. I have not provided that one stipend to anyone throughout the years because the county board has asked me to give money back when I have money as opposed to spending it for something that we didn't anticipate to budget. In addition to that, I have gone in under budget every single year, so I have given money back. I have been a good steward of these finances throughout the 4 years that I've been elected to this position. Plus, I've had to deal with unfunded mandates from the state. I know Ms. Gumbs was talking about the fact that they're so far behind sometimes or bad payers of it. Well, they also give us laws that I have to live within and I have to accommodate. The Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act are the biggest ones that is a part of the job that I have to do. That's a part of what the judiciary has to do, the public defender's office. These are things that we have to accommodate, thus the increases in our budgets. In addition to that, in 24, and from the very beginning, I kept coming to the county board asking for pay equity for my employees because I had high attrition rates. Because a county like Kendall, which is a percentage of what we have, pays more money than we do. And that shouldn't happen. So I kept losing staff and attorneys over and over again, which means we kept losing money overall to have to train additional people. In 25, I was given that pay equity for my employees. And again, I have to remind everybody, I'm paid by the state. When you gave that money to my people, that wasn't a benefit to me financially. It was a benefit to the people of Kane County because we stopped losing individuals as a result of this. When you're asking me to go back to 2024 numbers, you're asking me to wipe out that pay equity that you all voted and said was absolutely what the people in my office, as well as the public defender's office, deserved given the work that they do. As I said before, it is the county board's duty to appropriate sufficient funds for the county offices. If you do not do so, that could be viewed as an abuse of your discretion. This is what the finance committee presented in their budget. They said that it's county board's responsibility to establish the budget. That's correct. And it's the requirement of the managers and elected officials to live within the budget. That's also correct. But what was left out of that presentation is that it's the county board's job to appropriate sufficient funds for county officers to be able to perform our duties. That is legally where we are at right now. I'm going to turn it over to my very fantastic CFO, Terry Hunt, who understands the numbers much more than I do. And he's going to explain what is necessary for the budget. And I have to tell you, the budget that I have proposed is absolutely necessary for me to continue to do this because otherwise we're cutting services. Mr. Hunt?
Thank you. Is that on? Am I on? Okay, thanks. Everything that we've done in this slide has been done in accordance with what I just call Exhibit A that was presented by the Finance Committee or discussed at the Finance Committee about 2 weeks ago, maybe. And one of the inherent problems, and with all due respect to Chief Judge, budgeting is not boring. It's challenging, but it's not boring. Everything was focused upon the general fund, which has always been the focus of this board. And one of the challenges in trying to come up with a plan is it was developed with exclusive attention to expenses and total disregard to additional revenues. So the net of any deficit is the difference between your revenues and your expenses. It is not simply a matter of increasing or decreasing expenses. And we'll get into how that specifically impacts state's attorney's budget. But the overall expense budget is $20.6 million for the proposed budget. 12.3 million of that is in the general fund, and the general fund has budgeted revenue of about $2.7 million, leaving a $9.6 million to be covered by other revenue sources. We also generate approximately $5.4 million to completely cover all the various special revenue funds. So in essence, the state's attorney's fiscal year budget is funded 60% by the county, 40% by other sources. And as Ms. Mosser said, it's 100% necessary. Am I up or down here? Okay, so this is what was originally presented in Exhibit A. And unfortunately, that had some bad, had data that was not updated for the state's attorney, where it shows the $3.3 million difference on the third line down. When we made the corrections to mirror the circumstances that were in FY24 actual, it resulted in a reduction of our general fund expenses to 2.232 million, which is still a 22% differential, but not the 33% that was discussed previously. So even within that updated submission, we're looking at a reduction of 2.232 million if we're only focused on expenses. That's 18% of the general fund budget, and it doesn't consider the additional $1 million in grant monies, new grant monies that have come in since FY '24. We've got the DCEO grant of $1 million, which funded the entire salaries and all the operational costs plus vehicles for the newly created HEU unit. And we have 2 new JAG grants that are different than we typically incur, because those don't require any additional expenditure on our part. So we've got $200,000 in revenue for the violence prosecution and $178,000 for the co-occurring disorders. When you figure out your budgets, those are things that, in my opinion, should be considered. So this is back to Jamie here. That's primarily the general fund in the state's attorney's budget is primarily salaries. And in this case, you want to go forward with this. This is everybody is assigned in our org chart to a team. And I think Jamie can explain this probably better than I.
So as the chief judge said, we provide services. I don't have buildings that I can just sell to give up. I provide services. I prosecute cases and I represent this county. So what you're saying to me when I have to cut $2.3 million is that I have to fire people. So I'm going to give you an example of some things that I'd have to choose whether or not to prosecute. And one of those is child exploitation. You guys all heard ASA Dorr come in here and talk about the cases. He teared up, made everybody else tear up. We are the ones investigating those cases because the smaller communities cannot investigate them. And since 2022, 40 different people were investigated and arrested by this joint work with myself and the sheriff's office. 40 people that went uninvestigated because there were no resources. I'd have to make the choice to cut those individuals. In addition to that, we prosecute major crimes. We have murders, attempt murders, home invasions, armed violence. These are the attorneys in my office that have the most experience. Do I choose not to prosecute those cases any longer because they have the higher salaries, because they have more experience? I have advocates that go to court with my victims, that help them get orders of protection, that call them back, let them know what's going on, refer them to services. They help them fill out forms. These are individuals within my office who actually help people make this process easier. Do I have to choose to cut them out of my budget? I have a special victims unit that prosecutes the child pornography cases, and those have increased because of our investigations. Those are people who are sitting in prison right now where they deserve to be. They also prosecute arson cases, sex assault, and violent offenses against children and the elderly. Do I choose to not prosecute those cases any longer? My deferred prosecution unit is there to give people a chance who make a mistake and commit crimes because of untreated mental health, substance use, and a lack of resources. This gives people an opportunity to not have a conviction, but also take accountability and to get the treatment and resources that they need. Should I get rid of this and just go through traditional prosecutions with them? My abuse and neglect division, obviously they're the ones who go after the parents that abuse or neglect their children. They have to be highly specialized people within this unit because there's a lot of medical records that they have to go through, and these are hearings that go through quickly. Do I choose no longer to prosecute those cases, to have people who are there fighting for these children, the most vulnerable in our community? My specialty court division. Keep in mind, Kane County is leaps and bounds above most of the other counties because we are always looking for what better way we can help our community. We are the only county in the state of Illinois that has 4 specialty court units, so that we're truly helping the most people who have the highest risk and highest need. They also deal with forfeiture, sealings, expungement, and mental health petitions. Again, do I make the choice not to do that any longer? If I cut $2.2 million from that budget, that means I'm firing 26 employees. That's what those numbers were. Keep in mind, the county board originally said $3.3 million that I'd have to cut, which have been 41 of my employees. My employees have heard this. They're watching online right now. They're terrified. I have to send out emails all the time to let them know that we are working within the budget the best way we can. But this is the thing, that when you look at our offices, the sheriff's office, the public defender, the judiciary in my office, the circuit clerk, and you're going to hear this from all of us, it means we cut services. Your budget cuts mean I have to decide what to prosecute. Now I put the most dramatic positions in my office up there to really show what we have to look at. So maybe you say to me, Jamie, you have to cut retail theft cases. You can no longer prosecute those. What would all of our business owners do? All of the business owners that are going to come here to say that now people can just go steal and we're not going to hold those individuals accountable any longer. My job is to prosecute crimes in this county. I shouldn't have to pick and choose which ones I can actually prosecute. This is necessary for what we have to do. So that's my soapbox part. Here's the actual portion of the budget that you guys wanted to hear about, that Terry can answer any and all questions on about what it is that we actually have in our budget.
Okay, this is a summary by category of the proposed budget. The SAO combined includes the general fund, the civil division, and the special revenue funds that you can see are all separated here. General fund has expenses in excess of revenues of about $9.6 million. So this is a comparison initially to coincide with Exhibit A. It's comparing to the FY24 actual amounts. And these are the changes in the individual lines and the percentage changes, again, from FY24 actuals. And then we do the same thing because at the county board meeting the other day, a new theory was put forth to make the comparison to FY25 adopted budget. So the green shaded area is still unchanged. It's the FY26 proposed. The difference between the two plans at the expense level is really not significant to us, but it does give options for the comparison depending on which direction the county board decides to go after they've seen and heard all the presentations. And again, same thing, the aggregate changes by category and the percentage changes from the FY26 proposed to the FY25 adopted budgets.
So that's the summary of our budget presentation. We're obviously here for questions. What I would really like to emphasize again is that for judicial and public safety, that's what we are. We are public safety. I believe we live in a safe county, and I think we live in a safe county because of the initiatives we have brought forth, because of what we try to do, because we're aggressive in prosecutions of the people who really harm our community. So I would kindly ask that judicial and public safety make recommendations to finance that we do not have these sweeping cuts, which would actually make our community unsafe.
Okay, Blair, could you put us back on the packet, please? There. Okay, so this is what I'd prepared before we got the special presentation there. And I'm going to go through this really quickly because some of it we've already discussed, but some of it does provide context that was missing in that presentation. So we talked a little bit about the human exploitation unit. We got $1 million grant, new in FY25, didn't exist in 24. It's been renewed for FY26. And when I talk about the grants that are included in the FY26 budget, these have all been approved and certified and granted. We are still pursuing other grants, but they haven't been approved. And as such, we did not include anything in the FY26 budget that was not fully approved. The other two, I talked about the two JAG grants. The nice thing about them is they cover existing personnel. We don't have to hire anybody or spend any money for that. It brings in nearly $400,000 between those two grants. Although in Exhibit A, we don't get any credit for it because it's on the revenue side. It's not in the expenses. I just call this a new budget metric because in the past, although we prepared this budget the same way we always did, traditionally we would have compared it to the previous year. So this is comparing now to the Exhibit A. And you see here, we start off with the yellow highlighted, that 10,000,096 number there that's kind of circled. That was the total expenses on Exhibit A. The FY26 budget is in green and the blue is the change. And this is general fund only, not countywide or not office-wide. Again, here, there's just one of the things that I think is important, we did this in a way that was trying to compare apples and apples. The grants that existed in FY '24 are removed at this point. So you see what was actually in FY '24. COSAP and SAMHSA grants expired, so we're not trying to carry those forward into the comparison. The JJC Council grant is one that's renewed, although the amount varies from year to year. So the far right column is what I just called the FY '24 base, and that's based upon Exhibit A with the changes in the revenue side. So if we use that new concept as our new metric, you've got the base, and then we have the new DCEO grant, the 2 JAG grants, and the JJC Council grant. And this is what I think is more of the significant number for the board to consider here. So the FY '26 new metric is, for lack of a better term, what we're working with now. These charts, we just went through the same thing on Jamie's presentation. The few notes are that the budgeted revenues, grant revenues match exactly, because as I mentioned, we only included grants that have been approved. Our charges for services and reimbursements are up a little bit. The fines continue to drop though, because simply we are generating lesser revenues from what we get in the court hearings. The Health Department didn't extend their transfer, but that's only $35,000 difference. The main thing here we have, and is always the case, is salaries are the biggest chunk of any budget we've got here. The increase that we have year over year in the metric is that a $1.2 million increase, and salaries account for 97% of that. By way of explanation though, and one of the I guess criticisms of the Exhibit A is that it doesn't include the COLA that was passed for FY '25. The persons who were hired, who were in the budget, but weren't hired until late in 2024, we got the full impact of their salaries in FY '25 and going forward. And then we have included 4% COLA here too. So the difference is pretty easy to explain. That's what all that gobbledygook looks like in numbers. And again, here's our budgeted grant. One of the things we've always been very aware of and very focused on is finding grant revenues. We're limited in our revenues. This chart, kind of the blue line, indicates over the last 5 years where our grant revenue for the general fund has gone. You can see in FY '21, when Jamie came on, we were at $50,000. We are forecasting for FY '26, 1.456 million. So while our expenses are going up, we are not unaware of the restraints and the problems that the county board faces. We're doing our level best to find other ways to help supplement those. The SAO org chart is 25 pages long. I'm going to present that the next time. And if you have any questions at this point for either of us, we'll try to answer them.
Okay, any questions for our state's attorney regarding the budget presentation? Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to tell all the members of JPS that we truly appreciate everything you do. Ideally, we would love to be able to give you everything you want and or need. We're in a dilemma here. We have a problem. Our revenues are X amount. However, in listening to the presentation by Jamie and Terry, it looks to me like what we're looking at is about a $2.2 million difference between what we suggested. We weren't demanding it, just a suggestion, just as you suggested a 26 budget, about a $2.2 million difference. However, I believe there's about over $1 million that is a continual grant. The DCEO grant was renewed for 26.
Yes, but I am not guaranteed to have that again. Those were applied for by me through Senator Holmes and then Senator Castro. It's unheard of that you would get two different ones. It's not a recurring grant. So I'm not expecting that to come back again.
But we do have it for 26.
We do.
Okay. So if we take that million and then the 400,000 approximately from the J grants, what we're looking at is probably about an $800,000 difference. Would that be correct? If we're at 2.2 million difference, but then you have the grants of $1.4 million that applied towards your expenses?
Terry, just take it because now this is going less.
Sorry.
I know.
I mean, the 2.2 million of additional expenses that you're requesting, we do, and we have agreed that if you have additional income or revenue coming in, that we will apply that towards additional expenses. So what I'm trying to figure out is exactly what does the state's attorney's office request?
In net, we need about 1.4.
1.4. Okay. So we're not that, I mean, it's much better than 2.2. So you're taking 800,000 off of the requested expenses as additional fees or revenues, even though fee income is down maybe 120,000.
Fees are definitely down. I don't have that. I think it's, yeah. These are broken down by categories, so I don't have the individual line items within that. But yes, our grant revenues are up, reimbursements are up slightly, fees are about the same, and the fines are reduced some. But yes, one of the problems when we talk, and I heard the same thing when Chief Judge was making his presentation. Reimbursements are revenue items. The interpreter services are expense items.
Of course.
If you only focus on the expense items without the other, it skews the net. And that's where I think at some point we're going to have a discussion.
And I think, quite honestly, we've been looking at the expenses, not the revenues. And so what I'm trying to do is placate this large increase into something that might be considered, quote, reasonable. And by taking the grants and the other revenues into consideration, which we as the Finance Committee have agreed to do in reducing expense increases, you're suggesting about a $1.4 million increase.
I believe so.
Okay.
Shouldn't speak.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. I only come up here when I get confused. So regarding following up to Mr. Leonard's question, and perhaps both of you can answer this for me. So you have $1.4 million, which you received, and 60% of your request for money comes from the general fund. 40% is from the grant funds. So with that 1.4, Jamie, is that $1.4 million, has that already been accounted for salaries for the 40%? Because I'm sure you have staff that are required by that. So if we take that $1.4 million out of your grant fund, which you've already allocated towards expenses, that reduces, in my head, that reduces your staffing needs because you're shifting it into another budget line, that 1.4, which would may be underwriting other costs rather than those specific costs which those grants were allocated for. Does that make sense?
No, not, no.
Yeah.
No? So is that money variable? Can you,
No.
is that $1.4 million with those two grants, the DCO grant and the JAG grant, are they for specific expenses?
Yes.
Okay, the 60% for the general fund, are those underwriting those specific expenses as well?
No, because so right now the county funds my budget 60%. We have found 40% coverage through other means like grants.
Mm-hmm.
So when you put the grants over for the 40%, it's not helping the employees that are in the 60%.
But that's what I'm saying, or trying to say anyway. So $1.4 million is being shoved over to the 60%, meaning.
No,
No,
it's
not,
already
but
in the.
that's what I heard. That was the request. So $1.4 million gets allocated to the deficit, which gives you $800,000 or whatever the amount was, 1 point something million dollars. Is that accurate? Can you move that grant money to pay for the 60% of expenses? Or is the money allocated? And I believe it's allocated for special services. Isn't it? Yeah, you've got to pay for, is it child abuse? Something like that.
So the DCEO grant is $1 million grant. For FY 26, it's about $850,000 in salaries for 8 individuals.
And what for?
Human exploitation unit.
I'm
This
sorry,
is the
then
new
I'm
unit we
sorry.
just launched that is going to combat labor and sex trafficking. Because we do not have that being investigated here.
That's a real important thing. Yes. And the 400,000?
The other two, the 2 JAG grants, one covers portions of existing 3 salaries of existing staff, and the co-occurring disorders covers almost all of the salary of 2 of the collaborative diversion staff.
Okay.
And when I said the first one, the prosecution grant, those are assistant state's attorneys as opposed to staff.
So I know that there are restricted grants and unrestricted grants. Restricted grants are specific for a program expense, very, very much like the interpreters. The interpreter line item reimbursements cannot be spent on buying cars or material supplies. These are very specific programs which you have to account for in your grant review. The general fund money is used for your variety of other programs that you already have budgeted. So one can't complement the other because these individuals that you're going to be hiring with the $1 million grant is.
They're already hired.
Oh, hired. Okay.
Yes, these grants are for people we currently have in programming we currently have. I'm not hiring anybody new with these.
All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So that leaves the pressure on the 60%. What I'm trying to say is that I think we're talking about apples and oranges, that the grants are already allocated out with expenses. The other 60% is for everything else. So if we reduce the 60% by that $1.4 million, you're going to have less money to pay for those expenses that are already
I
out the
understand
door.
the question, but let me put it to you a different way. The grants that we talked about, specifically the DCEO grant, the 2 JAG grants, and the JJC Council grant, which is very small, those are all contained within the general fund, the revenue and the expenses. We also have a multitude of grants within the CAC, with our victim services. There are many more grants that are in the special revenue funds,
That's what I'm
but we have
Okay.
focused here entirely on the general fund. And that's why I mentioned those grants specifically, because they're already included in our FY 26 budget. They're also already included in all of the analysis as to the allocation of expenses.
So that was a question. So they're already allocated inside the general fund.
So I apologize for not understanding.
Okay, Mr. Roth and then Mr. Leonard had questions.
I'm recommending we take this offline because we've been here 2 hours and we still have some of the other judicials to resent. We're not going to solve it today.
The specific question Madam Chair has, I think the question has been answered.
Yes, it has
So,
been.
Mr. Leonard.
No, I just wanted to make one clarification. I think what Madam Chair wanted better understanding on, which I think Terry, you and Jamie explained, that grant money we talked about is applied to salaries in the general fund, period.
Correct. That's exactly
Yeah,
correct.
that's what you
Not
want.
special revenue.
And the whole reason why we're trying to say this is I do get that this is a difficult thing for the county board members. I have worked really hard with wonderful people like Terry to bring more money into this county to relieve the pressure off the general fund. I'm here advocating for the 196 people that I employ that are in courtrooms, that are outside working with clients, doing the work to keep this community safe. If I work hard to get 40% of my budget, I would ask the same thing for the county board to work hard to make sure that we have the other 60% given to these wonderful people that work for this county.
Okay, any other questions from our state's attorney? Okay, so we will move on to our public defender.
Alan?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Miss Allen. You had a question? Go ahead.
Not a problem. I just wanted to ask, Mr. Hunt,
Could you go up a little bit on your volume? We're having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, let me see if I can get closer. My question is for Mr. Hunt, and he was referring to 2024 as being artificially low because we did give the county board did agree to a kind of merit increase for the employees. And I just wondered, and that merit increase should be added to the 2024 amount. Can you possibly remind me how much that increase was that we approved?
Yes, Mr. Hunt stepped out, but thankfully this is one question I can actually answer.
Yay.
That was about $3 million in merit increases to my office. And so the reason why we're saying it is artificially low is if you just randomly pick 2024 to go back to do a comparison, you're forgetting that other departments may have gotten their increases in 23 or 24, whereas ours came for 25. So it essentially wipes out what this county board approved before. So that's about the amount that we're looking at.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Ms. Moss.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Miss Allen. Okay, any other questions? Okay, last call. Okay, moving on to our public defender.
Thank you. Good morning. I'll wait for. Okay. So my first slide just goes into the organization of our office as far as attorneys versus support staff. I just want to point out in this slide that over half of my staff is attorneys. These are the people that are in the courtrooms 365 days a year, moving forward the judicial system, both efficiently and effectively. This is our organizational chart, which has not changed from last year. And then an overview of our open and closed cases. For 2024, of the cases that we closed, 79% were closed in less than a year's time, with 56% of those being closed in less than 6 months' time. In 2024, we were appointed to 8 murder cases. We currently have 18 murder cases open in the office, with 6 set for trial either by the end of this year or early next year. In between 22 and 23, we were appointed to a total of 37 murder cases, which was really unprecedented for our office. And so we have been working through those numbers. What Ms. Mosser passed out her year-end statistics, and so I just wanted to comment a little bit on that. Of our numbers for 2024, we opened 3,327 felonies and 4,238 misdemeanors. If you look at Ms. Mosser's numbers, it indicates that they only filed 2,736 felonies. So how can we be appointed to more? Well, because sometimes people who have private attorneys no longer use their private attorneys and we get appointed to those cases, or people who had warrants in prior years come back and we get appointed to those cases as well. So our numbers can be more than the number of filings the state's attorney files in 1 year. So the American Bar Association has standards that they have set out for optimal caseloads for defense attorneys to provide representations to their clients that is both effective and efficient, and it works to make sure that their due process rights are protected. The American Bar Association standards are average caseloads for a year. For felony attorneys, that should be 150. For misdemeanor attorneys, that should be 300. In King County in 2024, our average felony caseload was 199 cases over the year. And for misdemeanors, it was 384. So those are well above the American Bar Association standards. That is right now with the attorneys that I have in the office. When you are going above these limits, what is happening is you are triaging cases. You are doing your best to move the cases through the system, but you are coming very close to not providing efficient and effective representation of your clients. Our caseloads have stayed consistent for the last 5 years. And so what you are seeing is that our numbers are not changing. Our work is not lessening. And with less attorneys, we are going even further above the numbers that have been set out by the American Bar Association. This slide is just we have talked a lot in prior years and prior presentations about comparable salaries. And this is just to show that our salaries in King County are not exorbitant in compared to other counties. We have worked hard to get our starting salary raised so that we are comparable to assistant state's attorneys and to other counties. In 2024, we raised our starting salary to $75,000. This was a steady increase beginning in 2022. But prior to 2022, we had not raised starting salary since 2015. What happens is that then we had a major lack of attorneys in our office. We had an unprecedented amount of openings. We had 7 attorneys that we were down in our office. In order to provide the representation that we are mandated to provide and that we want to provide to our attorneys, this meant that we had supervisors and myself in the courtrooms, covering the caseloads in the courtrooms while at the same time providing training to the younger attorneys and administration of the office. This was not sustainable, and the board heard us on that and helped us to increase our starting salary, and we are now fully staffed. The issue with salary is a major part of morale, but what also is an issue is caseloads. When you increase caseloads, that increases the amount of work that needs to be done, which leads to burnout and failure to retain employees. The attorneys do this job for their clients, and they want to do the best job that they can to meet the mandates that we have to follow. If their caseloads become unmanageable, they will look elsewhere, and we will be back in the same situation of not being able to retain attorneys. This is our budget comparison for the last, actually, I think I have 6 years in there. You have heard a lot this morning about services provided. And just like the other offices, the service that we provide is the people in the courtroom. In order to meet the budget restrictions that are possibly being placed on us, that means to cut services, we are cutting people. Public defenders are mandated by the Constitution, the United States Constitution, the Illinois Constitution, and Illinois state law. We are required to be in the courtrooms. I can't cut other services that we provide because the only service that we provide is the people. So that is what would need to be cut. My budget in 2025 was 96.3% salary and wages. The rest of my contractual obligations don't even come close to the numbers that are being suggested to be cut. So it would be people. And to cut the amount that has been suggested, as Ms. Mosser indicated, that is the amount that we were given to increase salaries so that we could retain attorneys. So I would be asked to cut the amount of money that I was given to make my office run effectively. I will also point out that from this slide, each year that I have done a budget, which what began in 2021, we have come in under budget and have given money back to the county. So what does it mean for us to have to cut 16% of our budget? That is 8 attorneys and 1 support staff. In courtroom, at the Kane Branch Court right now, there are 3 attorneys in that courtroom. Among the 3 of them, they have 868 cases. I would have to eliminate 2 attorneys from that courtroom. That is 868 cases for 1 attorney. That is well above the standards set by the American Bar Association, and frankly, is ineffective assistance of counsel. In courtroom 209, which is a very large and heavy trial courtroom, they currently have 578 cases in there. I would have to make that courtroom a 2-person courtroom. My misdemeanor division is 13 attorneys. Cutting 8 attorneys from our office is over half of 1 division that I have in the office. We've talked a lot in prior presentations too, that the mandates are not just the Safety Act, but the body worn cameras and how that impacts the attorneys in our office. I'm going to give you one more example of that because it was a case that I just worked on this week. It was a simple case. It was an argument outside of a bar. There were no injuries in this case. There were 42 videos for this case. 42 videos that had to be watched in order to be able to advise the client and to effectively represent him on his case. In a courtroom with 868 cases, 2 people can't handle that type of body worn camera and digital evidence. I've set forth the changes in the budget going into 2026. We do have a collective bargaining agreement, which is in its final year. The step up for that is 4%. And then our non-payroll expenses, I do have contractual obligations and slight increases in those contracts for next year. I have talked a lot to the board about our mandates and what we are required to do. A lot of that is unfunded mandates in the Safety Act and body worn cameras, but they are mandates. They are mandates that say that public defenders are required. It is true that those mandates do not tell you how many public defenders are required. But I think that these numbers, the numbers that I have shown you today, the numbers that I have shown you in other presentations shows that our office is consistently busy. We are consistently working. Our numbers are not changing. There is no indication that the numbers will be changing in the future. The number of attorneys that we have are what is necessary to move the judicial system forward. Eliminating attorneys from our office just doesn't change what happens in our office. It changes what happens in the judicial system. If we have less attorneys in the courtroom, judges' court calls don't get done as efficiently and as quickly as they would like. State's attorneys' cases rise because if we can't close our cases, they can't close their cases. Clerks, court reporters are in the courtrooms longer, which prevents them from doing work that they need to do in their own offices. So we are a major part of the judicial system. And if there are changes to our office, those are changes that impact the entire county. I have not asked for any more attorneys this year. I have asked for very little increase in the budget. I am trying to provide quality representation to our clients with the budget that we have been given. But we cannot do that by cutting people. I have put forth a budget that I believe enables us to perform the duties that we are mandated to do. And there is no way for me to cut any services other than people. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for our public defender? We're all questioned out. Okay.
Madam Chair, I do have an observation I'd just like to make briefly for the
Yes,
Public
please.
Defender's Office. The one thing to consider also with regard to the numbers that she has in her presentation, and I say this because the Public Defender's Office, until it changes, is still under the Chief Judge's Office. Every defendant, you all too, if you became defendants, or somebody you know does, has a right to a speedy trial. There are two types of speedy trial demands, or I should say entitlements. One is a constitutional one and one is a statutory one. The state of Illinois' statutory one is not as long as you might imagine. Understaffing the Public Defender's Office could result in the inability of these lawyers to move their cases along and prepare them enough to meet a defendant's request for a speedy trial. It's not a lawyer's request, it's a defendant's request. My prior life as a litigation attorney and with Frank here, I could anticipate a time in which 1983 or some other actions could be brought on behalf of defendants whose constitutional and statutory right to a speedy trial is violated based on finance rather than on tactical reasons for their cases, which are acceptable bases for an extension or exceeding the speedy trial demand from a defendant. I just suggest that the Public Defender's Office works as hard as anybody to make sure that they meet those timelines and should be allowed to continue to do so.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, we will move on now to our court services.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I have some business to do. I will skip a lot of the monthly reports. They're all on file. I will say that our caseloads and everything are detailed in there. They're all pretty consistent from month to month. I don't see any big changes. I do want to note that the financials are included in the packet for today, and you will see that court services is projected to be 1.2 million under budget. We usually are under budget. As a reminder, 400,000 of that is for juvenile placement, which we haven't been using in quite some time. I actually have a couple of slides on that, so I'll talk about that in more depth later. And then I have a resolution today that I intend to use that money that we're under budget to pay for. I'm not asking for more money, stuff like that. So with that, are you ready for the resolutions?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start with the first one.
Okay. The first resolution, oh my goodness, I said this and I wasn't ready. The first resolution I have in front of you, I have a bunch of resolutions asking your permission to let our juvenile detention facility increase the per diem amount that we charge other counties when we hold their kids. We're going up by a significant amount because we have taken into account all of our costs as well as the increasing medical costs. And you'll see that in our budget as well. Medical costs have gone up quite a bit. So we're passing on that cost to our partners because it's not fair to the Kane County taxpayers to absorb that when we're holding kids from other counties. So with that, the first resolution is asking your permission to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Montgomery County, which is far down south, to hold their kids at a per diem rate of $225 a day. It's currently at $175.
Williams moves.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second to move and to discuss and potentially
seconds.
approve? We have Mr. Williams moving, Mr. Tuppy seconds. Questions or comments? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Gums,
Yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Tepe,
Seppi, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes. That passes. And are all of them increasing to the same amount?
Yes, they'll all be increasing, but we're doing it as they expire.
Okay.
So just full transparency, I think there's 4 today, but there's more coming in the months ahead. I just couldn't do them all at once.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and introduce the rest of them.
Sure.
So they're the same. Okay, so the next resolution is an IGA with Mason County for juvenile detention services. May I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve?
Williams moves.
Seppi,
Williams
seconds.
moves, Ms. Gum seconds. Any comments or questions? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Gums,
Yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Tepe,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes. Okay, Item E is an intergovernmental agreement with Shelby County for juvenile detention services. May I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve?
Guns will move.
Ms. Gums moves.
Linder seconds.
Mr. Linder seconds. Any comments or questions? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Pepe,
Steffi, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes. Okay, and item F is a intergovernmental agreement with Caroline County for juvenile detention services. May I have a motion and a second to discuss and
Linder
potentially?
moves.
Gums will second.
Mr. Linder moves, Ms. Gums seconds. Any comments or questions regarding this? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Pepe,
Steffi, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes. Okay, I'll give you item G.
Awesome, thank you. So item G is authorizing a food service contract extension for the Juvenile Justice Center. We currently have an addendum. We piggyback on the adult jail and their food service for this. So our rates will be going up $4,000. Again, we're under budget. We're not asking for money. We'll be able to cover that.
Gums will move.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second to move and potentially discuss this resolution?
Sorry, Gums will move.
Ms.
Linder
Gums
seconds.
moves. Mr. Linder seconds. Any comments or questions? Okay, may I please have roll call?
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
Pepe,
Steffi, yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes. Okay, that passes
Awesome.
on as well.
So
Ready?
very fast, very awesome. So I will now move on to our presentation. I feel like I've presented to this board before on our functions and what we do, so I'm going to skip over a lot of that. Like I've also included slides about statutory citations. Not going to cover it. It's there if you want to look at it.
Thank you.
Just being transparent. Just as a brief reminder, probation, pretrial detention services, 189 staff spread throughout the county. And we do a lot. There you go. So I, at a very high level, don't want to go into the weeds too much because again, per Exhibit A, you're only asking court services to cut by 1%. Out of full transparency, that's because we cut a lot before we got to this point. We cut it in the budget process itself. So I'll talk about that a little bit. But when you look at our budget, this is a planning document. It's substantially similar to what we did in 24 and what we did in 25. You can see the JJC continues to eat a lot of our budget at 5.5 million. It's also the most tightly regulated thing that we do. There are a ton of state laws around it. We have to meet the minimums. And I talked about this a lot at the CAL back in February, and I'm happy to talk about that again if you like, and about why that is. And I'll talk about the financials in a minute. I do want to, here's just a brief overview so you can see, just looking at the pie slices, looks very similar to 2024. We're not proposing cutting any services. The major service we are cutting, or the contractual that we're cutting, is in juvenile placement. We took it down from over 400,000 to only 200,000. We have not been placing a lot of kids since the expansion of ACA and Medicaid expansion that was done back in 2014. So we've reaped that benefit and we return that money to you every single year. We just don't spend it. So in transparency, that's where we took a lot of the cuts from. So it's really not going to make a big difference on our bottom line. We were just lucky to have that line item. To address Mr. Ross' statement earlier about marrying our revenues with our expenses, Chairman Molina is absolutely right. The majority of our revenue comes from the states. And we do amateurize already. So when we submit a bill to the state, it's in the budget. It's in the finance system, full transparency on what we're billing and what we're expecting to get back. The problem, or just for consideration in this budget process, you're looking at expenses in a silo away from revenue. And I know I say this every single year. It's frustrating for me because I like to include this slide because you can see of our total 15.3 million budget, Kane County really is only funding 5.7 million. That 9.6 million, or 63%, we're funding through other means. That's the reimbursement for the salaries from the state of Illinois. That's our probation fees or user fees from the defendants themselves who are on probation. They're being assessed fees, and we're using those for different things, as well as the IGAs that you all just passed. I mean, that was how we're meeting that 1% cut that you asked for, because we estimate that'll bring in over additional 200,000 next year. And the chief is absolutely right. The way that the state reimburses, you have to pay first, and that's in the Probation Officers Act. It's an actual statute. The county makes the expenditure first, and then the state of Illinois reimburses you into your general fund. So this was for 26. I've gotten the new estimates from the state of Illinois. They're a little bit higher than that 7 million. I'm not ready to make that amendment yet, but that will be coming. So you can see it's really mirroring 2024 quite closely. Side by side, you can see the pie slices have not changed much, except for I am relying more on that green slice, which is our probation fees. It's a special fund that has no impact on the general fund, except that I'm moving expenses out of the general fund into the special funds, and I'll go into that next. At our last meeting, I think it was Ms. Mavis in particular wanted a 10-year retrospective. So this is our 10-year retrospective of expenses. I know that the statements were made that everyone remembers everything, but I took the liberty of putting on here major items to consider that have impacted our expenses. So the first thing I want to talk about is that we were audited, it was like 2014, for our juvenile detention services, and found that the kids were not getting enough school hours. At that time, the JJC, all of court services, our shifts were 7.5 hours each. As you can tell, that doesn't add up to 24 hours in a day. So it was an hour and a half that was not covered, but we still had to cover the juvenile detention facility where we house minor kids. And so that became an issue. We weren't doing enough school because they were missing school. We put them in their rooms for an hour and a half every single day to make up that time difference. They weren't getting school. We were really close to being cited for that. We had to reopen the union contract, renegotiate that with the union, increase our shifts to 8-hour shifts so that we could cover 24 hours a day. Then we were able to increase our educational minutes. We're required by statute to do 500 minutes a day. So we met that requirement. We eased that in over 2 years. That brought our budget up in 2016 or to 2017, it was just over 12 million. And then, as you all recall, in 2017, that's when we were told you need to cut. And we were asked to cut to essentially go back to what the budget was before we renegotiated to let the children go to school and to meet our minimum requirements. We did that. Obviously, we could not cut school as we had just renegotiated and almost been cited for that. So instead, we had to cut the only program we had that was not a mandate, which was electronic monitoring and global positioning, or to track domestic violence offenders via GPS. So we cut them at the end of 2017. That was 8 staff who were laid off. And by the way, sometimes people say that that didn't really happen because you don't see 8 people leaving in 1 month. That's because per union contract, more senior staff were able to bump less senior staff, and the process of negotiating those staff leaving took 3 or 4 months. So you see those 8 staff leaving over 4 months. Then in 2018, the union contract was due. The whole issue of layoffs became the central focal point of that contract. And that took months, 4 months, just to reach an impasse. And then they went on strike. That strike lasted through much of the summer. They came back, and that's why that budget is flat essentially from 2018 to 2019, because we weren't paying them. So we saved a lot of money in our payroll. It was not fun. I personally worked 70-hour weeks. We had a lot of our exempt staff working, or non-exempt staff were working 70-hour weeks to make it work, but we made it work. I have a slide later on where I can show you that we also concurrently cut our juvenile drug court. And we also, that's where we began cutting juvenile placement hardcore as well. And that is why you can see those expenditures really start reducing. In 2020, 2021, again, we were audited by the state. I mentioned earlier, when the county gets your salary reimbursements by statute, they're supposed to go into the general fund. But previous to 2022, my drug court staff were paid out of the riverboat grants. Well, they were being reimbursed by the state of Illinois, which required them to come out of the general fund. So those staff were moved from the riverboat into the general fund. And that is why you see that increase in 21 and 22. And then, as you know, in 23, the Pretrial Fairness Act starts. We did ask for 2 additional staff. We only kept 1. We didn't fill the other. And so then you can see that our budget decreased in 24. I will also note, you can see at the top, so over that 10-year span, I mean, everything that I iterated is the major reason why we needed an increase. That was a 21% increase. The rate of inflation, though, increased 31% during the same time period. We did not keep up with the rate of inflation. I do want to insert this discussion. We've begun talking about it at the state level when it comes to probation, is that there's a lot of talk at the federal level about cutting Medicaid expansion, and scaling back the ACA or repealing the ACA. So you heard me mention earlier, in 2018, we formally closed our juvenile drug court. That was in part because in 2014, Medicaid expansion happened and they covered low-income people, particularly kids, to be able to get drug treatment and to be able to get inpatient treatment for psychological needs as well as their substance abuse counseling. That didn't used to be covered under insurance. The ACA expansion or ACA made it so that young adults, emerging adults, could be covered under their parents' policies. So something to remember when we talk about juvenile court services. So these expenses have declined since 2014 because of the expansion, okay? But since that time, while our expenses have decreased and we've gotten used to not having those expenses, it's still in the Juvenile Court Act that those services have to be offered. So if the expansion goes away, the law is still there. We're just not paying for it because of the practices of the insurance industry, not because the law has changed. And so what we saw before 2014 was that a lot of parents were calling the police on their own children for finding drugs or whatever in their bedrooms. And so they were entering the court system that way, and they were getting their drug treatment through the courts. That has been eliminated because of the ACA and the Medicaid expansion. If those get rolled back, I'm afeared that we will go back to that time. And so we will have additional expenses that we need to incur at the local level because the law itself has not changed. And so you can see when I talk about revenue, our revenue has, as it's shifted you can see in 2015, the revenue starts going down. That's because of the expansion of the ACA. Even though the courts were ordering that these kids go to placement. And again, it's in the juvenile statute. So let me say this, if you are a 16 or a 17-year-old and you get a retail theft or you do a home invasion, right? You're sentenced when you're 17, but you're under the Juvenile Court Act. So you might get 4 years probation. So 17, 18, 19, 20, you're a 20-year-old sentenced under the Juvenile Court Act, and the juvenile laws are applicable to you. And so then you're being serviced by juvenile court services. So they're emerging adults, they're young adults, but they're being subject to the Juvenile Court Act. So a lot of those kids, when the court was ordering that they go to drug placement or have inpatient services or have intensive outpatient drug treatment, and then the court was petitioning the parents for reimbursement. So as we're using those services less, the expenses are less, the revenue is less. Our expenses and our revenues are tied together 100%. They go together. It's really hard for me to give a presentation with looking at them in silos. But so we really saw that decline. And so we really started putting an emphasis in 2019 by petitioning the state to cover more of our staff for that salary reimbursement. And so that's why you see some of that revenue going up. So when we first really doing a push to get the state to expand the number of employees they were covering, they were getting more money from the federal government as well. So there's more to pass through. Like those were a lot closer. Like I think we had 70 grants and aids and about 70 salary subsidies. So over the years, I've been able to petition to the state to move more and more of our staff from that salary subsidy category into the grants and aid category, which is why so much of our revenue, over $7 million a year, comes from the state specifically for the staff. And I like my little Star Trek guy because that kind of illustrates the red part, the shoulders, heads and shoulders. That's what the county's paying. The black is what the state of Illinois is paying, and it's on a per employee basis. So if you cut employees, you cut revenue. As far as my contractuals that are not covered, or my contractuals, this is what it looks like. Overwhelming, our largest cost is the JJC medical costs. Medical costs around the country are going up. I'm just not sure that there's a lot more we can do about that. Juvenile boarding cares, that 200,000, that would be the last big contractual I would cut if you needed further cuts. Everything else you can see, they're not large amounts. JJC food, we have to feed the kids. And so a lot of the funds that the cuts I was able to make before we got to today, I made by shifting what I could shift out of the general fund into special funds. I built up these special funds when we had those federal grants. I was like a squirrel hoarding acorns, I swear to God. So I got these accounts as big as I could, knowing that a rainy day was coming. That rainy day is here. And so that's where I've shifted these expenses to come from. So you can see my substance abuse screening, I was able to get it up to over 500,000, super excited, but it's only 500,000. We're scheduling about 70,000 to come out of that. I'm guessing it's going to be more like 100,000, but it's sustainable for now. Drug court balance, again, I was shifting funds out of probation fees into drug court. Drug court was the one getting all those funds. I got funds to do drunk testing and stuff like that. So I was using those grant funds to do all those services and saving my pennies where I could in the special funds. But even my probation fees, I saved where I could. But you can see, I mean, my balance in probation fees is down to just over 2 million, and we're projecting 1.5 million in expenses. So that's what I did. That's where I shifted the money in full transparency. And just to, as a further example or illustration of my point about the revenue and the expenses being tied together, is like the JJC. So like those largest contractual expenses I have are for the JJC, which by statute has to come from the general fund, except for the employees. The employees are reimbursed. But so the total cost of the JJC is somewhere, over 5 million. But once I do the state subsidies and the IGAs that you guys approved this morning, thank you very much, and some of that food reimbursement that we get from the Department of Agriculture, King County is only paying like just over 600,000, right about 700,000 a year. So you're getting the value of a $5 million building by only paying under $700,000. If, however, we were to eliminate that building and we had to send all of those kids elsewhere to be housed, we lose that revenue from the staff. You lose all of that. But now you have to pay the other county their portion of the expense for housing those kids. And then your costs go up to over 2 million that's not reimbursed. The state will not reimburse you for detaining kids. They will reimburse you for having staff. So my cautionary note is that I understand you're in a hard place. I understand that you're going to have to make cuts and do what you need to do, but please, once you get to that point, ask us back to explain to you what we're cutting and what that means, because revenues and expenses are tied and you might have an unexpected consequence. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Austin. Any questions for court services? Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to comment, first of all, Ms. Austin, thank you very much. What you've done over the last 10 years, and I did a few projections, is less than a 3% increase per year in expenses. If we as a board had been as responsible and put money away into special funds and done what you had done, we wouldn't be in the dilemma we are today. So I thank you very much for what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Okay, no other questions or comments? We will move on to our circuit clerk.
Well, good afternoon now, everyone. Thanks for staying for the final presentation. Let me get to it.
Audience members, we are still in our Judicial and Public Safety Committee meeting. Liquor Commission meeting was scheduled at 11:30. It will not be starting at 11:30, as you can see. So bear with us while we get through our committee. Thank you.
Give me a couple of minutes here. Okay, so here is my 2026 presentation. I have not made any changes to it. I'll go through the numbers a little bit for you. So this is a list of everything that we do in the office, where we maintain the records, we scan and link, we have clerks in all the courtrooms. Plus, we do a lot of administrative duties that flow through all the other offices into the case management system. I would like to point out that just for last month, we had 165 checks that went out to all the agencies, local agencies, state police, from the fines and fees that we do collect in Kane County. These are our 10 locations, or not 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 locations. And we also are remote court for 4 locations on Tuesdays and Fridays. Just last year, I believe, we had compiled a list of 284 statutes, Illinois compiled state statutes and mandates that we have to abide by in the circuit clerk's office. We have not updated that yet, so I'm sure that's going to be increased by at least 20 more. I kept the Pretrial Fairness Act in this because, of course, we are all still dealing with it. I believe the biggest question now is how to fund it going forward, which is the main problem for all of us in all of our offices. This is my organizational chart. And these are my the general fund actual and budgeted from 2020 and 2025. As you can see, I'll show down in the slides that is 95% salaries. We have cut in other areas that we knew we could, as far as like conferences, stuff like that, but it doesn't make a huge dent in it because we do have a CBA, and we do have to follow state statutes with our clerks in the courtrooms. I would like to point out, though, one thing on the slide. If you look at the general fund from 2020, okay, 6 million. We're not much higher than that for 2026. And we are almost fully staffed with our clerks. We are down 4 currently, which we have to hire, which is a struggle right now with all the information coming out of the county, and people are starting to look for other jobs, which will put us in a bad place as far as having clerks in the courtrooms. Next, let's see. Sorry. Then these are our collections that we've collected. We still send out 2 notices to try and get back that money that's owed to the county. So we're doing pretty good with that. This is our total cases that we get, that we have, and our head count and our e-file transactions. As you can see, we've kept our head count the same. But e-file is really taking off, and that is something that AI actually works with, because it's repetition. It's what clerks enter, repetition. Same type of cases. What it does is it compiles the information, and it can shoot through the system a lot faster than a human being. I have in my budget, in one of my special funds, because I'm going to be looking for a grant for this, for the modern technology grant, to try and get bots for our AI, that's what they're called, to work to sustain our headcount that we have right now. Because I know the county is not going to let me increase my headcount, but the cases keep coming in, and there are more cases. So this is the only thing to look at in the future if we want to sustain what we have right now. In this slide, it shows the budgeted revenue, expenditures, actual, and then I have the trend going down. We still are collecting about 50% less than we were in 2018, actually, for the county. So we used to bring in over 50,000 a day for the county. That's for all the offices. That's not just for the circuit clerk's office. And now it runs about 23,000 to 25,000. And that started in 2018, 2019, right before COVID and COVID. If you also look at this in 2020, the approved budget was 9 million. And in 2025, the approved budget was 5.8 million. So I think we have run our office very lean. We have increased our wages in 2023, and we did have our CBA in 2023. It goes up, it's due actually December 1st of 2025. And that is why I did have an increase in my budget to sustain that CBA. I have spoke of this before. Last one in when you hire on under a union contract, it's last one in is first one to go. Senior contracts, I'm sorry, union contracts always protect the senior employees. And all of our union staff are our court staff. This is just a list of all the great things we have done over the past 4 or 5 years. I broke this down to give you an example of what is actually needed in the circuit clerk's office. I did it bare bones. We would have to have 54 deputy clerks. If we do not have 54 deputy clerks, then this is the result. We would not be able to provide any services that are not mandated by the state of Illinois, which is telephones, customer service. We would not answer telephones. We would not be able to have all our satellite offices open for customer service. They would have to come to the circuit clerk's office in St. Charles to either pay their fines online or come in and stand in line, because I will only be able to have 2 employees at that window. I will not have enough clerks to man all the courtrooms and also to handle all the reports that are due with the state of Illinois. These are mandated services. I can't switch. I can't like pull money out of a mattress in the back room. It's not there. We have always, just like many of the offices here, given back about $1 million every year. And that is not, believe me, intentional. That is because of the way the money comes in through the county, the way fines and fees come in, and rotating staff. So we project, like Chief Judge said, we project going forward what we're going to need. And that's all we can give you. Many times you're lucky and you get $1 million back. Sometimes you're not. But we have to project what we already projected in order to make our offices work. So that is all I have.
Okay, any questions for our circuit clerk regarding her budget presentation? Okay, no questions. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, any old business?
Madam Chair,
Gums?
I do have, I wrote some thoughts down and I need to soapbox it here and
Oh, we were going to do.
and
the
have a
thoughts.
statement.
Please go ahead.
All right. This is my favorite committee. All of you have done great work in presenting today. It is my favorite committee because it's public safety, right? Like it's public safety. Hello, it affects all of us. So I guess my question is often, and I wrote some notes down, so I might be a little all over the board here, but how important is it to this board? How important is public safety to this board? I think that's a very relevant question. There's a couple of highlights. Our chief judge reminded us that we're having new subdivisions and new growth. And with that comes new services or added services. He also highlighted that when the public asks us to cut, perhaps they don't realize that those are services that affect all of our constituents. So that is something that we talked about today. I wrote it down because it's important. You know, many folks that listen to our conversations, they think of the judiciary and public safety, and they're saying, well, you know, more crimes, they get committed in bad neighborhoods, but that's not true. Our sex offenders don't live in bad neighborhoods. They live in every neighborhood. They live right next to any one of our taxpayers. Domestic abusers, they don't live in bad neighborhoods. They live in every neighborhood next to every taxpayer and might actually be a taxpayer or the victim of a taxpayer. Drug and alcohol offenses, they drive around our county. We're investing in those programs and they live in our neighborhoods. They affect us. They're from here. They live right next door. And I have to repeat these things because at the end, you'll understand why. The drug and alcohol offenders, the programs that we provide for them, they're important to me. These budgets reflected and shared with us the benefits that we get from them. And I think that our board needs to hear it. They're not just in bad neighborhoods. They're not bad people. They're judges, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're first responders, they're board members, they're everyone that could kill your family member if they're intoxicated in a vehicle, if they don't get the help and the services that are required. Our state's attorney identified 40 convictions of child exploitation and sex offenses. Those people are sitting in jail, she said, today. My question isn't, well, frankly, that's awesome, right? That's great. But how many victims did those 40 people have? That should be the question that we think about when we invest is how many victims are we saving through the investment in this county? How many less residents die and our coroner have to go pick up by our investments in this county? I've been to the scenes with her. And it's horrible. And these are our taxpayers that are dying in our county, our family members, and it's an investment. How many defendants shouldn't get a fair representation because we can't invest in the public defender's office? We're investing. People deserve fair representation, and that's what our public defender provides. It's not something that's an option. I hope if you're a defendant, you get that. And behind all of the things that we talked about today are the day-to-day workers, the ones we don't see, we don't hear, we don't ever meet. They're in the cubicle. That's, way too small for them. And we pay them. We've invested in them. Over the last few years, we have invested in raises and increases so we can keep them. And I guess the question is, when do we stop ignoring the revenue for our investment? We've heard it here. They've continued to ask for that. And I know it's difficult, but when the public asks us to cut, they're asking us to cut these things. Children that have been violated by 40 human beings. We've invested, we've actually done the investigations and put those people where they need to be. So they're saving our children too. They're saving those programs and what we're investing in. They're actually doing good stuff. And I don't think it's something to be ashamed of or feel bad about. And my final thought on that is that I don't feel bad for my votes over the many years to increase revenue. I never will, because I see it. I have an intimate knowledge of our judiciary, and this is the biggest budget committee that we have. This is where all the money is. And I don't know that the public hears these committee meetings very often, but it's our onus to make sure that they're protected as best we can. So I don't feel bad, because our investments are saving lives. They just are. We will fail sometimes. Is it politically uncomfortable to increase revenue? Yes. Said every politician in their life. Is it necessary? Absolutely. So my question continues to be, how important is public safety to this county board? And I will just leave it at that. And I'm going to cry otherwise. I do this all the time. And thank you guys. Seriously. I know it sucks, but people are listening to this county board right now all over. Everyone that works for us is probably going to listen to this. They're terrified, and we got to just have a little ownership here.
Any other thoughts for this from this committee? I think, Ms. Gumbs, what you're saying is there's a lot of, there's truth to it, and I respect your beliefs and what you're saying. I think our budgets reflect what we consider the most important in our county. And when we went out for referendum, for the sales tax referendum, we were requesting exactly that. We were requesting to make sure that our county remained safe, that we had adequate money to make sure that our child exploitation unit was funded, to make sure that our judiciary ran effectively. And we failed in making that a priority for our citizens. And I think as county board members, we need to take that on. And because of that failure of this extra revenue source coming in, we are going to have to make cuts. Unfortunately, each and every single department will be looking at cuts, and those equate to service cuts, and those might equate to people cuts. At some point, hopefully, we will continue to look at revenue sources. But at the same time, I think we need to understand that our property tax owners cannot hold only burden and be the only source of revenue to fund this county. So hopefully we can make sure that our residents understand that going forward. And this is going to be a tough decision. But I can't say, and I think the one thing I can say is that we will be making cuts because we don't have the revenues to meet the expenditures that are being requested. So it's tough, and I agree with you. I totally agree with you, but that's where we're at. That's where our citizens, that's the decision they've made for us regarding increasing our revenue sources. And there's only so much the county board can do regarding that. I'll open it up in case anybody else wants to say anything. Before I do that, I just want to make sure we understand budgets were presented from the JPS committee to this committee meeting. Per my understanding of the code, Mr. Frank, I'll put you on for a second. We are just reviewing the budgets. Recommendations are not an action item out of this committee. They've never have been. So I want to make sure I understand, but I also want to make sure that I hear what some of our presenters have said. Once recommendations have come through our finance committee and executive, I would personally like to hear what the ramifications of those decisions are going to be on our JPS committee, but no official recommendation is needed from JPS for that to continue.
So the specifics of this is correct. You do not have to provide any kind of recommendation to the finance committee of that sort. I will say historically, and this goes back even beyond 4 years, the practice has largely been that the oversight committee of whoever the elected official or the department would have a pretty interactive process with that. It's up to the board on whether or not they want to have an interactive process, or they simply want to just receive the submittals and, check the box kind of idea. But at this point, I would say that the box has been checked for JPS.
Okay, Mr. Linder.
I'll be a little more brief than Ms. Gums, but it's sort of along the same line. We've been looking at this problem for a while, and I ask people I see, my neighbors, people who call me on the phone about other issues, my fellow board members, what is it we're doing here in Kane County that we ought to quit so we can save some money? I had a suggestion because I was thinking some of the people that sit in the back row back there sometimes, we're not mandated by state law to plow snow or put salt on ice. And we could save millions by not doing that. Does that make any sense at all? No. And we can get into the arrests we do in the child exploitation area. This thing that we're just getting into with sex trafficking, the arrests that we've had in Kane County in the last year indicate that's a big problem. What do we stop doing so that we can save $29 million? I don't know, but somebody needs to come up with an answer, or we need to come up with $29 million. And part of that is going to have to come in revenue. People don't like paying taxes. They love living in a place where they get all of the quality services that they get. 25 years ago, if you lived in the countryside and you called for a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, you might wait half an hour, 45 minutes. Today, we've cut that by a drastic number. Are there a lot more sheriff's deputies, a lot more cars, a lot more gasoline, better radios? We got all of that. What do you want us to cut? And that's the end of it.
I'll open it up to anybody else who want to comment from the committee. Okay, any new business? I'll entertain a request to place reports on file.
Ask unanimous consent to place the reports on file.
Okay, no opposition. There's no need for executive session. May I have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
Mr. Linder moves.
Council second.
Ms. Gums seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, this committee